Shido was a useless nitwit who can't talk to baddies, but his life changes when he is forced to riz multiple spiritual magic girls, or they will destroy the world. One morning before this, 30 years have passed since a massive space quake of unknown origin destroyed the Eurasian continent and isekai'd about 150 million people. Shido was woken up by his sister Kotori in the most annoying way possible. He threatened her with a tickle attack so that she would leave him alone to handle his glorious morning wood. A little while later, he went downstairs, and as he prepared breakfast, Kotori sat in the living room watching the news. It turned out that a space quake, which was much smaller than the one that occurred 30 years ago, had occurred, and thankfully there were no casualties. The siblings weren't surprised by this because after the first space quake occurred, more space quakes began to occur around the globe for 6 months. However, they suddenly stopped and only started up again 5 years ago, with most of the quakes occurring in Japan. After breakfast, the siblings left home and parted ways in front of their favorite restaurant, promising to meet up there after school. Kotori told Shido that even if there was a space quake, he had to come to the restaurant, and he assured her that he'd be there. While they were saying their goodbyes, the Powerpuff Girls, I, Me, and Mai, Shido's classmates happened to see them. The girls commented on how close the siblings were and wondered if it was because of Shido's sister complex, which they had heard rumors about. As soon as Kotori walked away, Tonomachi, another classmate of Shido's and a certified idiot, grabbed Shido's hand and asked if he was ready for the new semester. His action caused the girls to talk about the rumor that Tonomachi was a batter for the other team, and they wondered if he was trying to move in on Shido since they couldn't hear their conversation. Just then, I noticed Origami, the top student in their year, watching Shido and Tonomachi from behind a light pole. Before I could point out this Joe Goldberg behavior to her friends, Origami left. Later at school, while Tonomachi and Shido were discussing, Origami approached them and said Shido's name, which surprised him. After she took her seat, Shido asked Tonomachi who she was, and the gossip monger informed him that she was Tobiichi Origami, the Einstein of their year, and one of the girls he wished would fall for his negative riz. The next moment, the bell rang, signaling that class was about to begin, so the boys ended their conversation as Tamai Sensei, their homeroom teacher, walked in. After classes that day, alarms went off, signaling an incoming space quake, so the students were instructed to evacuate to the quake bunkers. As Shido waited in line with the other students, hoping to reach the bunker, he tried to contact Kotori to ensure she was safe in another bunker. Unfortunately, he couldn't, so he tracked her location and was shocked when it showed that she was at the restaurant. Without thinking, Shido rushed back to the surface, but before he got to the restaurant, the space quake occurred, stopping him in his tracks. As soon as the quake stopped, he noticed that not only had most of the buildings been damaged, but that in the middle of the crater was a girl, fronted him, asking if he'd come there to annihilate her. Shido tried to respond, but before he could, a flying unit of armed baddies suddenly showed up. They immediately opened fire on the girl, using everything in their arsenal against her, but the mystery girl fought back. As the fight between the armed girls and the mystery girl continued, Shido remained where he was, watching them like the confused idiot he was at that moment. When one of the girls swooped down to engage the mystery girl, Shido realized that it was Origami. She also recognized, but before either of them could ask the obvious question of why they were there, the mystery girl turned her attention to them. To protect Shido, Origami charged at the girl with her modified lightsaber, and as the two fought, a powerful shockwave was released. This shockwave knocked Shido out, and when he woke up later, he was being examined by a woman who introduced herself as Reina, and explained that he'd been found unconscious in the crater, and had been brought aboard their ship, Fraxinus, to get checked out. After assuring him that Kotori was safe, she took him to the bridge, and he was welcomed by the Vice Commander Kanazuki, before coming face to face with the commander, who, to his utmost surprise, was Kotori. Ignoring the shock her brother was going through, Kotori began explaining the situation to him. She informed him that the mystery girl was what they called a spirit, and said that her arrival on Earth was the cause of the space quake which occurred that day. She also told him that Origami's group of wannabe Robocops were known as the AST, or the Anti-Spirit Team. They were a team tasked by the government to slay every spirit which manifested after a space quake. Shido was shocked to hear that Origami's mission had been to end a person's life, but he relaxed when Kotori revealed that there was a way to defeat a spirit without revoking their breathing license, which involved him. The following day, Shido was surprised when Tamai-sensei introduced Reina to the class as their new physics teacher. During the break, he went to meet Reina and Kotori since they were together in the lab and confronted them. They explained that they needed to watch over him, and this was the best way to do it without raising suspicion. He then asked Kuroi if she was playing hooky, and she told him that she'd made the proper arrangements, refusing to explain further. Instead, she told him that his training to become the savior of spirits was about to begin, and instructed Reni to show him the training module. The module turned out to be a gal game. which briefly explained spirits and informed him that his role in the fight was to riz the spirits up and make them fall in love with him. Later, after he met with Kotori and Reine, Shido was approached by Origami, who asked him to forget about everything he saw that day. Shido asked why she was part of the spirit slaying corps, and she told him it was because a spirit was responsible for the deaths of her parents, which shocked him. About a week later, Shido completed the Gal game, so when he arrived at school, he went to see Rini and Kotori, and they informed him that the second stage of his training would kick off that day. This stage was the practical stage, and his first target was Tamae-sensei. Try as he may, Shido couldn't get the right words out and stuttered like a fool while trying to speak to Tamae. To help him out, Reine instructed him to repeat the words she said, and Shido did so without thinking. The result of this was Tamae exposing her cougar ways and planning her marriage to Shido, before telling him she would wait for him to come of age. Shocked by the woman's groomer response, Shido told her that his confession was a lie and yeeted away from her immediately. During his mad dash, he bumped into Origami, causing both of them to fall, and as Shido tried to get up, he got a glimpse of her underwear. Thankfully, he was more of a gentleman than a cultured degenerate, so he averted his gaze and fixed it on Origami's face instead. From his earpiece, Kotori instructed him to make a move on Origami. Since he was tongue-tied, Reine stepped in again, telling him what to say, and to their surprise, Origami quickly agreed to go on a date with him just as the spacequake alarms went off. Immediately, Origami told him she had to leave, and Kotori instructed Shido to board Fraxinus, explaining that the quake would occur at the school. A little while later, the school was badly damaged because of the quake, but surprisingly, the AST didn't make a move to capture the spirit. Kotori explained that it was because their gear wasn't designed for indoor combat, and told Shido that it was time for him to make his move. He was dropped off outside the school, and as he walked inside, Kotori assured him that she and her team had his back. When he found the spirit, she pointed her sword at him, asking who he was, so Kotori had the ship's AI analyze the situation and come up with a possible response for him. Unfortunately, the option the crew picked almost cost Shido his life when he said it because the girl had zero tolerance for mid-pickup lines. Fortunately, she recognized him as the guy she'd met before, so Shido introduced himself and assured her that he wasn't part of the group that wanted her dead. The girl didn't believe him and asked to know what his true intentions were. But, like before, Kotori's team stepped in, preventing Shido from saying what he had in mind. The problem with this decision was that every option they picked annoyed the spirit so much that she attacked Shido. Fearing for his life, Shido decided to stop acting like a mindless puppet and speak to the girl without any assistance. He told her that he'd come to talk to her so he could get to know her, causing the girl to warm up to him. She admitted that he was the first human to speak to her, as all the AST did was shoot at her and try to end her life. As they conversed, Shido learned that she didn't have a name, and she told him she wouldn't mind if he gave her one. Since his brain wasn't the type to function properly under pressure, Kotori's crew offered to help him come up with a name. After much deliberation, he was given the name Tome, but when he told the spirit the name, she became pissed. Fearing that she'd do something to him, Shido quickly came up with the name Toka, and surprisingly, she liked the name. While he was teaching her to spell her name, the AST suddenly opened fire on them, hoping to draw Toka out. Thankfully, Shido wasn't hurt, and when Toka advised him to leave, he stubbornly refused, saying that his plot armor was stronger than titanium. Intrigued by his fearlessness, Toka decided to stay and chat with him, using her spirit barrier to stop the bullets from reaching them. As the two discussed, Kotori instructed Shido to ask Toka out on a date, so he did, but the clueless girl had no idea what a date was. While he was trying to explain it to her, the part of the building covering him fell off, causing the AST to halt their assault, but the moment Origami realized it was Shido, she charged into the classroom. Shido tried explaining that Toka hadn't done anything to him, but Origami refused to listen. The next moment, Origami charged at Toka, but Toka defended herself using her sword Sandalphon. The force of her attack pushed Origami back, but thankfully Shido was there to act as her human cushion. At the end of the day, Toka pulled an avatar Roku, and Origami was airlifted out of the school premises, while her captain scolded her because she'd sustained some injuries. The following day, when Shido returned to the rubble that used to be the school, Toka showed up so they could go on their date. Shido asked her to change outfits, as her astral dress would only make them targets. He gave her the picture Origami gave to him, so she could use it as a reference, and after she changed outfits using her powers, the two left for their date. Toka was fascinated by everything she saw, especially the food, so Shido bought her some, and as they walked around, Shido asked why she'd disappeared during her fight with Origami. Toka explained that the action had been involuntary, just like when she appeared on Earth, which surprised him. It also made him realize that the spacequakes occurred unintentionally, and that Toka might just be a victim of circumstances. Since Toka had walked off, Shido quickly rushed after her, unaware that Origami was watching them. Meanwhile, Toka came across a restaurant which she rushed into, much to Shido's horror, because the boy was almost as broke as the main cast of Gintama. However, luck shined upon him in the form of Tonomachi, who suddenly appeared like the fairy godmother and gave him some vouchers for the restaurant. He said he wouldn't be a good wingman if he couldn't help his friend out, and Shido was grateful for it. Upon entering the restaurant, Shido was greeted by Reina, who told him that she was working undercover. She then pointed him in the direction of Toka, and after Shido took his seat, he was surprised to learn that Kotori was their waitress. As the siblings watched Toka attempt to take Goku's title as the foodie of the year, Kotori instructed Shido to take Toka to a specific area. Shido pointed out that the area in question was a residential one, but she insisted that he do as she said, so he shut up. Shortly after Shido and Toka left the restaurant, Shido discovered that Kotori's people had transformed the residential area into a festival spot. They told Shido and Toka that since they were the 100,000th people to visit, they had won the chance to have anything they wanted for free. Hearing that she could pig out on anything she wanted, Toka didn't hold back and dragged Shido to every booth so she could taste their delicious food. At the same time, Sherlock Holmes, Origami, had tracked their location and sent word to her people, requesting backup. Meanwhile, Toka and Shido went on to play a game in a raffle booth and won the grand prize, which was a ticket to a place called Dream Park. Shido wondered if Dream Park was their rip-off version of Disneyland, but soon realized how wrong he was when he found himself standing in front of a motel. Toka was excited to go in, but Shido was very determined to avoid any form of aerobics, so he pulled her away before she could go on. Unknown to them, Origami was hiding inside the motel's premises, and as Shido dragged Toka away, she requested a CR unit to be sent to her location. Once it arrived, she suited up and quietly followed Shido and Toka to their next destination, which was a gaming center which fascinated Toka. What caught her attention the most was the catcher machine with a bread plushie, so Shido let her have a go at it. Unfortunately, she didn't get it on her first try, so he switched to boyfriend mode and helped her try again. This time, the plushie got stuck at the side of the drop hole, making Toka sad, but by some miracle, after she begged and pleaded, it dropped. After collecting her plushie, the pair left the arcade, and as they sat in a playground, Toka admitted that she'd enjoyed their date, so Shido tried to convince her to remain on Earth permanently. Unknown to them, Origami was on a nearby hill with a sniper rifle, awaiting orders from her captain to take Toka out. It didn't take long for the order to be given, so she took the shot without hesitation. Unfortunately, Shido's spidey senses kicked in at that moment, so he pushed Toka out of the way and got shot instead. Seeing Shido's lifeless body lying on the ground made Toka snap, so she transformed into her astral dress and summoned her angel Sandalphon, activating its ultimate destruction mode, Halvan Helev. Origami's captain ordered her team to retreat, but Origami remained where she was, as she had yet to come to terms with the fact that she had shot Shido. Meanwhile, aboard Fraxinus, the crew detected a spacequake just as the alarms went off, and they told Kotori that the time frame was too short for people to evacuate. Kotori assured them that things would be fine, but they looked at her like she'd lost more than a few screws. They asked why she was so calm after seeing her brother getting gunned down, and Kotori responded, saying that Shido wasn't some useless NPC created for the sake of the plot. As if on cue, Shido's injury was enveloped by a flame, and the next moment, he jerked awake, wondering what in the reincarnation had happened. On the other hand, Toka was about to unleash her anger on Origami, who was yet to move, as she still couldn't accept what she'd done. Before Toka could deliver her punishment, she heard screaming and turned around to see Shido falling towards her, so she rushed to save him. After confirming that Shido was alive, Toka panicked about losing control of her sword, which would cause an explosion. Shido told her to calm down and that they needed to kiss to avert the danger. Eager to please him, Toka kissed Shido, sealing away her powers and leaving her in her birthday suit. A few days later, after renovations, Toka was introduced as a transfer student to Shido's class. A few days later, Shido got caught in the rain on his way to school, so he decided to take shelter in a shrine. While there, he saw a young girl playing in the puddle, and when she fell, he rushed to help her, but the girl was afraid and moved away. Later, at school, an excited Toka rushed into the class with a plate of cookies she had baked and wanted to give him. Before he could try them, Origami appeared with cookies of her own, and both girls began arguing about whose cookie he'd eat first. To settle the issue, Shido took a cookie from each girl and ate them at the same time before telling the girls that they tasted divine. Upon getting home later that day, Shido went to take a shower, but when he opened the door, he was shocked to see Toka occupying the place. Immediately, he went to find Kotori and demanded answers, so she informed him that Toka would be living with them temporarily. Since Reina was there at the time, the trio sat at the dinner table and Reina explained the things Kotori didn't. She said that kissing Toka and sealing her powers away, but they still had to keep her emotions in cheek. So until the housing unit they were building was finished, she would stay with them. The next day at school, while Shido was having lunch with Toka and Origami, the spacequake alarms went off, so Origami dashed off to join her team. While the rest of the students were evacuating, Rainy informed Shido that they couldn't bring Toka with them, since she didn't have her powers. Having no choice, he handed Toka over to Tamai-sensei, pleading with the woman to watch over her while he was away. Toka didn't understand why Shido had to leave, but he promised her that he would be back, and asked her to remain by their teacher's side. Shortly after, Shido and Reina were teleported aboard Fraxinus, and when he arrived at the bridge, Kotori showed him the live footage from the spacequake's crater. Shido couldn't believe that the new spirit was the young girl he'd met at the shrine, and after watching how relentless the AST were in their mission to end her life, Shido told Kotori that he wished to play the hero and save the girl. A little while later, he was teleported inside the mall where the spirit had taken refuge, and while Kotori was instructing him on what to do, the girl and her puppet revealed themselves to him. Kotori and the crew offered their assistance as usual, but it didn't work, so Shido ignored the option they gave and introduced himself to them. The puppet responded that its name was Yoshinon, but because Shido was a dense fool, he asked the girl if she and the puppet shared the same name. Suddenly, the girl's happiness meter dropped, so Kotori told him to fix it before things got out of hand. So he changed the topic and asked the girl if she would go on a date with him, which surprised Yoshinon. Meanwhile, in the school's quake bunker, Tamai tried to assure a worried Toka that Shido was fine, but Toka wasn't convinced and left to search for him before Tamai realized what was happening. Back in the mall, Shido tried to talk the girl down from the jungle gym set she climbed onto, but she refused to listen and fell. Immediately, Shido moved to catch her, so she landed on him, and their lips accidentally touched. The girl got off him, and Yoshinon apologized for their clumsiness. But before Shido could respond, Kotori informed him that there was an emergency. Just as she was about to tell him what it was, he sensed the angry energy that Super Saiyan Toka was sending his way and panicked. Toka angrily demanded to know why he was locking lips with someone else. So Shido explained that it was an accident, but Yoshinon piped up, saying it was because his new favorite key was the minor key. Kotori warned Shido that if he didn't calm Toka down, her powers would return to her, so he tried to appease her. He swore that the rabbit was lying, but because Toka was gullible, she ate up every lie that Yoshinon told her. Annoyed, Toka grabbed the puppet and tried to strangle it, causing the girl to try to take it from her. At that moment, Kotori informed Shido that the young spirit's emotions were rapidly declining, so he politely asked Toka to return the puppet. Unfortunately, his request only made Toka assume he had chosen the girl over her. Before he could explain that she was wrong, the young spirit summoned her angel Zadkiel, and it came up out of the ground. Hopping onto its back, the girl inserted her hand into the creature's neck and began controlling it like a puppet. The next moment, the store froze, and Kotori ordered Shido to get out of there before she went all Elsa on them. Almost as if she'd heard Kotori, the girl began shooting icicles at them, so Shido grabbed Toka and jumped out of the way. The angel then picked Yoshinon up and jumped out of the building, making it a target for the AST. Fortunately, she managed to escape by creating snow, which blocked the AST's visuals. With their target gone, Ryuko, Origami's captain, ordered her team to retreat and return to base. As Origami prepared to obey these orders, she spotted Yoshinon lying on the ground and went to pick it up. The following day, Rainy invited Toka to a diner to discuss the issue between her and Shido. Toka denied that she was upset with Shido, but Rainy managed to coax the truth out of her, and she admitted that she didn't understand why she felt that way. Rainy then helped Toka understand that Shido cared for her, and that there wasn't anything between Shido and Yoshino, by reminding her that Shido had saved her at the risk of his life when Yoshino attacked them with her icicles. At the same time, close to the mall where the incident occurred, Shido was on his way home from the grocery store when he spotted the young spirit searching through the trash. Upon closer inspection, he noticed she didn't have Yoshinon, so he called out to her. At first, she was spooked and tried to run away, but when he asked if she was looking for Yoshinon, she ran to him and nodded her head in response. Shido called Kotori and asked her to help him search for Yoshinon. Kotori assured him that her team was on the case, but advised him to keep the girl in his sights, so he told the girl that he would help her search for her puppet. The girl then told him that her name was Yoshino, and when she turned to leave, he stopped her and gave her his umbrella, assuring her that he was fine without it. Elsewhere, Shido and Yoshino continue searching for Yoshinon, but when Yoshino's stomach starts growling, Shido invites her back to his place for a meal. At the house, Shido began preparing a meal for Yoshino, and as he did that, he asked questions about Yoshinon. Yoshino told him that the puppet was her best friend and hero, stating that Yoshinon was the kind of person she wanted to be. After their meal, Shido asked Yoshino why she didn't fight back when the AST attacked her, and she told him it was because she hated violence and got scared easily. After hearing this, Shido patted her head and promised to not only find Yoshino, but to also protect her from those who wished to harm her. Yoshino thanked Shido for his help and awkwardly addressed the accidental kiss, which she didn't understand. As Shido explained, he tried to sneak a kiss to seal her powers. Toka entered, froze at the sight, and Yoshino disappeared. Kotori then informed Shido they had found Yoshino, and he was surprised to learn Origami had it. After reaching her apartment, Shido's communication with Kotori was cut off, leaving him alone. Origami invited him in and served a cup of terrible-tasting tea that nearly choked him. As he lay on the floor, Origami straddled him, but Shido told her that he wasn't interested in breaching her garden gates and asked her to get off him. Origami told him she'd only comply with his request if he agreed to address her by her first name instead of her last name. Seeing nothing wrong with the request, Shido agreed, so he got up and excused herself to take a shower, seeing as how being on top of him had opened her floodgates. While Origami showered, Shido searched every nook and cranny of her apartment until he found Yoshino and returned to the spot where she left him. When Origami finished her shower, she came to sit beside Shido in her towel, making him feel uncomfortable. However, she didn't leave him alone and questioned him about what happened on the day she shot him. She asked how he'd come back from the dead, but Shido expertly changed the conversation by asking if she'd ever talked to a spirit. He told her that he'd spoken to them, which surprised Origami, and she warned him to stay away from them, stating that they were dangerous beings. Shido defended Toka and Yoshino, saying that the girls were good, and pleading with Origami not to hurt them because they were innocent. Just then, her phone vibrated with a warning of a spacequake, so she told Shido to head to a bunker. Later, she joined her team to chase a scared Yoshino around the city, and when she got cornered, she summoned Zadkiel, who turned the place into a frozen winterland as soon as it appeared. While running, Yoshino heard Shido call out to her, so she changed directions and approached him. Just as Shido was about to reunite her with her beloved puppet, Origami opened fire on Yoshino, causing the girl to become scared and lose control of her angel. From afar, Toka watched helplessly as Shido was about to get hit by Zadkiel's blast, so she attempted to summon Sandalphon. Unfortunately, since her powers were sealed, she couldn't summon her angel and became worried. However, at the last minute, she managed to summon the angel to act as a shield for Shido. After Zadkiel released his icy blast, he began moving again, so Origami and her team chased after it, leaving Shido alone. When Toka arrived, she apologized for allowing the green-eyed monster to make her doubt him, and he assured her that he wasn't angry with her. He then asked for her help to save Yoshino, which pissed her off again, so he explained that Yoshino was a spirit in need of his help, just like she had been. In the end, she realized how wrong she had been, so she told him to get on Sandalphon and use it to get to Yoshino before it was too late. At the same time, to protect herself, Yoshino created a blizzard, which prevented the AST from drawing closer to her. Refusing to give up, Origami activated her realizer and used it to lift a nearby building, which she intended to drop at the center of the blizzard. However, Toka slashed the building in half before she could achieve her goal, and when Ryoko saw her, she ordered her team to go after her instead. With the AST focused on hunting Toka, Shido made his way into the blizzard with Yoshino, ignoring Kotori's warning that he may die even with his regenerative powers. Upon entering the dome, he felt weak and collapsed, worrying Yoshino. Fortunately, his powers healed his injuries, and he playfully revealed Yoshino to her, fulfilling his promise. Overcome with emotion, Yoshino cried, and he reassured her that everything was okay. After she thanked him for finding Yoshino, he said it was her turn to be saved, which required them to kiss. At first it seemed like she wouldn't do it, however she surprised him by kissing him unexpectedly, and immediately her astral dress, angel, and blizzard vanished. Days later, Shido was surprised to see the new building standing next to their house, and Kotori explained that it was the new living quarters they had built for the spirits. Just then, Yoshino approached the sibling, and after greeting them, she told Shido she was looking forward to seeing him around often. Sometime later, Shido informed Kotori that the girls wanted to visit a hot spring, so she told him she would make the necessary arrangements. While they were still discussing, Kanazuki inserted himself into the conversation, suggesting that Kotori join them on the trip. He promised to hold down the fort while she was gone, but ultimately revealed his dirty and cultured desires to spy on her while she was enjoying the spring. As punishment for his culturedness, Kotori ordered him to be taken away to a certain location where he was to dig and fill up a hole for the rest of the day. Meanwhile, at the AST headquarters, Ryuko was informed by her superior that DEM Industries would send someone capable of joining her team since all their recent missions had been a failure. After leaving the old man's office, Ryuko took her anger out on her paperwork, but stopped when one of her subordinates came to speak to her about their annual company trip. Hearing about the trip instantly brightened up Ryuko's mood, but when she heard that the higher-ups canceled it because of the recent increase in spirit activity, she nearly blew a fuse. However, the girl calmed her down by suggesting they visit a hot spring instead to take the edge off, and Ryuko happily welcomed the idea. The girl immediately left to inform her fellow group members about their captain's decision, and they were all thrilled except for Origami, who told them that they ought to spend their free time training since they will never get a training arc. Just then, Shido called to tell her that he couldn't return the book he borrowed from her like he promised. Origami inquired if something was happening, but before he could respond, she heard Toka telling him to get moving as they had to get to the hot springs. Later on, as Rina drove Shido and the girls to the hot springs, the girls looked out the window in awe as it was their first time in a car. When Shido gave Yoshino an encouraging pat on the head, Toka insisted he do the same for her, but he told her that unless he suddenly became Plastic Man, there was no way he could reach her from where he was. When she began complaining about how much he preferred Yoshino to her, Yoshino asked Shido to pat his head, and Shido obliged much to Toka's annoyance. Her anger soon got the best of her, so the next time she threw a tantrum, her foot went through the car floor and hit the road, causing it to cave in. Coincidentally, the AST deployment train happened to be directly underneath them. So, when the cave-in happened, their path got blocked, forcing them to continue their journey on foot. On the surface, Shido's group was also continuing on foot, and Toka, feeling sorry, apologized for acting like a spoiled brat. Shido assured her that he wasn't angry with her, and cheered her up by patting her on the head like she wanted. Fraxinus's crew observed them from the sky, and when they noticed that the AST group was close behind them, they became worried, believing that they were after the girls. Since Kotori was absent, they appointed a temporary commander and proceeded to create roadblocks to stop the AST group. While they searched for another route to take, Shido and the girls continued on their journey, but Shido stopped in his tracks when he spotted Kotori pretending to be a shop attendant. He asked why she was there, and she told him it was because she wanted to keep an eye on them. Realizing she was being a Pinocchio, Shido told her that she could join them, which made her happy. Unfortunately, her happiness was short-lived because she received a call from her crew, informing her of the presence of the AST group, so she asked them to proceed without her. Speaking of the AST, the group encountered another blockade, but instead of finding another route, a frustrated Ryuko used explosives to destroy the wall. When Kotori noticed what they had done, she ordered her crew to stop them at all costs, so they launched a full-scale, non-lethal attack on the AST. Eventually, Ryuko got fed up with the Looney Tunes style of obstruction and decided to retaliate by destroying all the traps Kotori's crew set, annoying Kotori even more. Unfortunately, one of the missiles dropped and exploded close to where Shido and the girls were, causing Yoshino to let go of Yoshino. When she realized that her puppet was gone, Yoshino began crying, and the next moment, the area was hit with rain and ice. Reine told Shido to locate the puppet if he wanted the girl to stop crying, so he assured Yoshino that he'd get Yoshino back and went off to find the puppet. Seeing that Ryuko's actions had opened the way for the AST to proceed, Kotori instructed her crew to use all the traps in their arsenal to stop them. Following their commander's instructions, the crew set off all the traps, causing Ryoko to wonder why everything was working against her and her plans to relax. Irritated, she ordered her troops to fight back, and as they did, Shido did his best to avoid the chaos as he searched for Yoshino. When he located the puppet, he turned to leave but stopped in his tracks when he spotted a giant bomb falling from the sky. When Kotori realized that her brother was in the direct line of the impending explosion, she ordered her crew to stop the attack, but it was already too late. The bomb hit and exploded. Fortunately, Shido was saved by Toka, who arrived just in time and cast a barrier right before the bomb exploded. Origami spotted Toka when the smoke cleared up, and immediately she tried to attack, but before she could, they disappeared into thin air. This made the other AST members who saw them wonder if everything that happened was because of spirits. When everything settled down, Ryuko stood on top of the rubble and laughed happily as she announced that she was feeling much better, much to the relief of her troops. Shortly after, they all arrived at the hot springs, and just as they moved to get into the water, they were frozen solid. This was because Yoshino had a breakdown and released her powers after watching Yoshino's head fall into the water. With the hot spring out of commission, Shido and the girls thought about returning home when Kanazuki called Kotori to inform her that the spot he was instructed to dig was a hot spring, so they went there instead. Days later, Mana, the agent from DEM, arrived, and during the daily briefing, while they were watching the recorded footage of the fight the team had with Yoshino, Mana's attention was drawn to Shido. Shocked, she referred to him as Big Brother, surprising Origami. So after the briefing, Origami approached Mana and asked why she'd called Shido her brother. Instead of responding, Mana asked Origami what the nature of her relationship with Shido was, and the delusional cuckoo said they were lovers. At school the next day, a new student was introduced to Shido's class, and the girl told the class that her name was Kurumi, after which she announced that she was a spirit, shocking Shido, Toka, and Origami into silence. When Tamae-sensei told Kurumi to pick a seat, she requested that Shido show her around the school later, so she could familiarize herself with it. While that was happening, Ryuko and her team received a report that a spirit had enrolled at Raisin High School. Ryuko refused to believe the report was accurate, but Mana assured her that it was, stating that the spirit in question had isekai'd over 10,000 people, not including the ones that died because of the spacequake she caused, and this spirit was famously known as Nightmare. Back at school, Kotori confirmed to Shido that Kurumi was a spirit, and instructed him to tap into his inner Rizzler and make her fall for him before the AST came looking for her. The next moment, Kurumi called out to Shido, asking him to take her on the tour as he had promised. As the two began their tour, they weren't aware that Toka and Origami were watching them. Abroad, Fraxinus, Kotori, and the crew monitor Shido and Kurumi, and as usual, they vote on which action is the best for him to take. The crew tried to help Shido up his flirting game, so they voted on what he should tell Kurumi. When the voting was done, Kotori noticed that someone picked the option to ask Kurumi to show Shido her underwear, and when she asked who it was, Kanazuki stepped up. The cultured fool tried to defend his decision, but Kotori got tired of listening to him, so she snapped her fingers and he was taken away again. As soon as the doors closed, Kotori wondered out loud how such a perverse option came about, and when she repeated the question, Shido parroted it to Kurumi. It was at that moment that Kotori realized that she'd accidentally turned on her mic, so she told Shido that it was the wrong option, and instructed him to find a way to salvage the situation. However, Kurumi asked Shido if he would like to take a peek, adding that she wouldn't mind, so long as it was him, before walking up the stairs to stand before him. Before Shido could recover from the shock, Kurumi slowly began to lift her skirt, but Shido resisted the temptation and stopped her. He apologized for making her do something so inappropriate, and asked what she meant when she said she was a spirit. Kurumi answered that he knew what she meant, revealing that she knew all about his dealings with spirits, which surprised him and the crew of Fraxinus. Shido tried to get her to tell him how she discovered his secret, but Kurumi remained tight-lipped, leaving him more confused. The next moment, she took his hands in hers and told him that from the moment she found out about him, she'd been praying for a chance to be alone with him. She then asked if he could do a favor for her, but before she could say what it was, Toka and Origami fell out of the nearby locker. The shocked Shido asked what they had been doing in the locker, and each girl gave a different response. When they asked Shido why he was holding hands with Kurumi, the sneaky witch told them it was because she had been feeling dizzy and weak. Later, after school, Kurumi thanked Shido and Toka for showing her around the school, but whispered to Shido that next time she wished it would be just the two of them alone. She then said goodbye to the two before running off, and as she walked home, she bumped into a guy who was coming out of an alley with his friends. Kurumi immediately apologized, but the man insisted that she owed him more than an apology, making her realize that she'd run into a bunch of sleazeballs. Instead of freaking out or attempting to run, Kurumi played along, promising the guys a good time, so they followed her into the alley. The next moment, their blood-curdling screams filled the air, and after Truck-kun passed by, all that was left were bloodstains and a crazed-looking Kurumi, who thanked the three men for providing dinner for her. Just then, Mana appeared in the alley and casually called Kurumi out for eating people, like she was saying hello to an old friend. Elsewhere, Shido and Toka had just finished grocery shopping and were on their way home when Mana suddenly showed up and hugged Shido, calling him Big Brother, which surprised them. Having no choice, they took her home and introduced her to Kotori and Yoshino. When they sat down to discuss their familiar relationship, it was revealed that Shido was adopted by Kotori's family when he was younger, and that neither he nor Mana remembered much from their childhood. Shido admitted that he didn't remember Mana, and she told him that she also didn't remember him, explaining that she only knew they were related because of the picture in her locket, which she showed them. Mana said that the only thing she remembered about him was that she felt sad when he was taken away, but now that they were reunited, she was happy. When she went to hug him again, a jealous Kotori kicked Shido out of his seat, and when they asked why she did it, she firmly stated that she wasn't going to let Mana take her brother away. Mana assured her that she wasn't planning on doing so and explained that she was fine, knowing that Shido was doing okay. When she mentioned that she was his biological sister, Kotori took offense, and a pointless argument began between them. When they finally stopped, Shido asked Mana to tell him where she was staying so they could visit her, but she answered vaguely before rushing off. The following day, during roll call, it was discovered that Kurumi was absent, and Shido wondered out loud if she had dropped out. Origami responded that she would no longer attend school again, confusing Shido, but before he could question her, Kurumi arrived. Origami's reaction to seeing her was one of shock, and Shido noticed it, but his phone pinged at that moment with a message from Kotori, asking him to meet her in the physics room later. During lunch break, Shido went to the physics room to meet Kotori and Reina, and they showed him the surveillance footage from the day before when Mana and Kurumi met. What happened was that Mana equipped her CR unit while Kurumi equipped her astral dress, but in the blink of an eye, Mana shot Kurumi down. As Kurumi lay injured on the ground, Mana approached her and finished her off, much to Shido's horror. Meanwhile, Origami confronted Kurumi, remarking that she should be dead, so Kurumi then restrained her with her shadow hands and began taunting her, saying they failed their mission. Origami demanded to know what her fate was, and Kurumi told her that her true target was Shido, before threatening to hurt her if she got in her way. After classes, Shido approached Kurumi and asked her out on a date, as per Kotori's instructions, and she happily agreed. As Shido and Toka walked home later, he apologized for ditching her during lunch, but Toka wasn't paying attention. This was because she was lost in thought, thinking about the conversation she had with I, Mai, and me after they found her crying during lunch. When she told them it was because Shido was yet to return, they hugged her and promised to help her out. In the present, Shido and Toka arrived at his place, and while he went to put the groceries they bought away, Toka locked the door and pulled the curtains closed. Curious, Shido asked what the problem was, but she ignored him, unbuttoned her shirt, and began crawling towards him with a ticket in her mouth. Still confused, Shido tried moving back and accidentally fell on the couch as he asked Toka if she was feeling okay. Wondering why her seductive advance wasn't working, Toka stopped and read from a piece of paper. When she was done, she put the ticket between her melons and continued crawling towards Shido until she got to him. She then moved closer to him as she asked if he would go on a date with her the next day, and without thinking, he answered that he would, taking the ticket out of her cleavage. Satisfied, Toka informed him that they would meet in front of the station by 10, after which she happily took her leave. Shortly after this, he received a call from Origami, who told him to meet her in front of the station by 11, and without hearing his response, she hung up the phone, and that was how he ended up having 3 dates lined up for the same day. Nevertheless, he showed up in front of the station the next day before 10 to wait for Toka, and when she arrived, they went to the aquarium. Toka was in awe of everything she saw, but Shido couldn't stay with her for long because Kotori informed him that it was almost time for him to meet Kurumi. Using the excuse of a terrible stomachache, Shido rushed out of the aquarium to find a secluded area where Fraxinus' teleportation device picked him up and deposited him near the station. When Kurumi and the crew voted for him to take her to a lingerie store, Shido proposed the idea to Kurumi, and the succubus in training happily agreed, so they went to the store. There, Shido picked a piece for Kurumi because the crew voted on it, so she took the piece and went into the changing room. When she re-emerged shortly after wearing the piece, I, Mai, and me suddenly showed up and saw the two together, so they asked Shido why he was with her. The next moment, Kotori informed him that it was time for his date with Origami, so he pulled the same trick he pulled with Toka, and before he left, he complimented Kurumi. His actions annoyed the 3 girls, so they chased after him, demanding an answer to their questions, but he outran them. When he got to Origami, he apologized for being late, and she assured him that she wasn't angry as she just arrived. They then went to a restaurant to have lunch, and while they ate, Shido spotted Toka searching for him, causing him to nearly choke on his food. When he recovered, he gave the same excuse about having a stomachache and rushed out of the restaurant as he'd just heard his house was on fire. Toka was relieved when she saw him, but her stomach growled at that moment, signaling the fact that she was hungry. Shido then took her to eat at a sushi restaurant, and while they were there, he feigned another stomachache so he could return to his date with Kurumi. When he met Kurumi, he was surprised after learning that she bought the lingerie he picked out because he had complimented her looks in it. As the day progressed, Shido shuffled between the 3 girls like a deck of cards, while trying to avoid getting caught by I, Mai, and me. Yoshino helped him one time when it seemed like he was about to get caught, so he continued his 3-way canon event. Later on, Shido and Kurumi went to a park, but Shido excused himself again, and as she waited for him, Kurumi heard a kitten crying. Curious, she went to investigate and came across a bunch of delinquents, terrorizing the kitten with pellet guns. As soon as she moved towards the boys, the hidden cameras the Fraxinus crew was using to monitor her suddenly lost signal. When Shido returned to find the bench empty, Kotori informed him that they had lost sight of Kurumi. Worried, he rushed to find her at the location where they last saw her, and when he arrived, he was shocked as the scene before him was something out of a horror movie. Unable to bear the sight, Shido began panicking and fell to his knees, and he watched as shot the last boy even though he begged her to spare his life. She then turned her attention to Shido, and to prevent him from running, she used her shadows to hold him in place. Just as she was about to do what she'd always wanted to do to him, she was suddenly thrown off him by an invisible force. As soon as she collided with the tree, Mana materialized and stood between her and Shido. She shot at Kurumi, injuring her in the process before walking up to her to finish the job. Shocked, Shido asked Mana how she could execute someone without batting an eye, and Mana responded, saying that it was her duty to slay spirits. She told Shido not to worry his pretty little head about what she'd done because Kurumi never truly stayed dead. Mana then revealed that she'd finished Kurumi off more times than she could count and said she'd keep doing it until the crazy spirit died for good. Appalled, Shido snapped at her, so she used territory to push him back and kept it on so he couldn't intervene with what she was about to do. Later, as a traumatized Shido mindlessly walked back to the station, he was met by Origami and Toka, who bumped into each other earlier. Worried, Toka grabbed Shido's hand and questioned him, but he was so out of it that his mind flashed back to the horror he witnessed in the park and immediately pulled away from her. Seeing the look of hurt on Toka's face, Shido apologized and then ran off because he had yet to come to terms with what he'd seen. A few hours later, as he returned home, he met Toka waiting for him outside, and after she confirmed that he was feeling better, she grabbed his hand and ran off. Shido asked where they were heading, and she answered that they were continuing their date. When they got to a restaurant, Shido told her that he couldn't afford to pay for their meal, and she assured him that he didn't have to because Sugar Mommy Reni had given her her black card. As they conversed, Toka revealed that Reina and Kotori had filled her in what transpired at the park with Mana and Kurumi. Shido admitted that he didn't know how he would save Kurumi because she was different from her and Yoshino, but Tohoa assured him that it wasn't so and convinced him not to give up on Kurumi. The following day, when Shido saw Kurumi, he approached her and promised that no matter what happened, he would save her. This statement irritated Kurumi, but she kept her cool and told Shido that his decision was a foolish one. After walking away from him, she went to the rooftop and changed her uniform into her astral dress before enveloping the entire school in a barrier. Meanwhile, Mana and Kurotri met at a secret location, and Mana expressed her disappointment at Kotori for working with Ratatosker. She said Kotori was putting Shido's life at risk, but defended her decision to work with Ratatostler, and then asked Mana why she was working for DEM. Mana was surprised that Kotori knew who she worked for, but still answered, saying that they had done more for her than anyone else ever did. Kotori looked at her with pity and asked how she could keep working for DEM after all the things they had done to her body. Confused, Mana asked what she was talking about, and that was when Kotori realized that the things done to Mana were done without her knowledge. It turned out that when Reina was conducting a background check on Mana, she had discovered the file with information regarding Mana. The file clearly stated that Mana had been pumped full of magical energy, which was a big risk to her life. The clueless girl had only 10 years left to live, and just as Kotori was about to spill the tea, they both received calls, informing them that Kurumi had released a boatload of spirit energy at the high school. Back at the school, everyone except Shido, who had spirit energy inside his body, and Toka, who was a spirit, passed out on the floor. As Shido spoke to Reini through his earpiece, Kurumi's voice came over the address system and she told Shido to come to the roof. When he got to the roof, he confronted Kurumi about her actions, and she revealed that the barrier sucked up the lifespan of those inside of it, and showed him how the clock in her left eye was slowly reversing, meaning her lifespan was getting replenished. Shido demanded that she undo her barrier, and she told him that she would do it after he retracted his statement about wanting to save her because she couldn't be saved. When Shido refused, she summoned a space quake and asked what he'd do if the quake hit while everyone at the school was immobilized. As Shido thought of the best option to take, Reina told him that Kurumi's emotional state had changed, stating that the spirit seemed to be afraid of him. Surprised, Shido devised a plan and told Kurumi that if she didn't stop the quake and remove the barrier, he would jump off the roof. Kurumi scoffed and called his threat a bluff, so Shido proved just how serious he was by tipping his head back and falling. Immediately, Kurumi went after him, and once he was safely back on the roof, she angrily scolded him, toying with his life. Unfazed, Shido told her that if she didn't comply with his request, he would find another way to end his life, so she reluctantly stopped the quake and removed the barrier. With the crisis averted, Shido once again told Kurumi that he would save her, and just as he was about to convince her to let him do it, a hand forced its way through her chest, shocking Shido. When her body fell, another Kurumi appeared, revealing that the secret to Kurumi's seemingly endless life was cloning. She'd been sending out clones to do her bidding while she remained in the shadows observing everything. After the clone Kurumi was dragged away by shadows, the real Kurumi summoned more shadows to hold Shido in place. However, before she could do anything to him, her arm was sliced off by Mana, who had just arrived, so Kurumi declared that it was time for Mana to meet her maker. She summoned her angel Zafki and used the power of its fourth bullet, which turns back time a little to fix her arm. She then began taunting Mana, but Mana assured her that getting rid of her would be a walk in the park since she had done it many times before. What Mana hadn't expected was for Kurumi to use her angel's power to speed up her reaction time. So before Mana could react, Kurumi shot her. Refusing to stay down, Mana charged at Kurumi, but Kurumi used her angel's powers to stop her before shooting her multiple times. Surprisingly, Mana didn't die, and as she lay on the floor, Toka and Origami arrived and said they would handle Kurumi. Ignoring their threat, Kurumi summoned more shadow clones to hold all 4 of them down and summoned another spacequake. However, it was suddenly destroyed, shocking them. The next moment, Shido heard Kotori's voice, saying that it had been neutralized by an equal force. Following the voice, the group looked up and were surprised to see Kotori dressed in an astral dress and surrounded by flames. Kotori didn't give room for questions, and told Shido that she would temporarily take her power back from him, before summoning her angel, Kamail. Immediately, Kurumi resummoned Zafkiel, but instead of engaging Kotori, she sent her clones to fight in her stead. Kotori easily took them out using her flames, after which she took out the clones holding Shido captive. Suddenly, Kurumi teleported next to them after shooting herself with one of her bullets, but Kotori fought her off. In retaliation, Kurumi shot the 7th bullet at Kotori, freezing her in place and summoning her clones to all shoot Kotori. The last shot was delivered by the real Kurumi, and Kotori fell to the floor dead. But before Kurumi could celebrate her victory, Kotori's injuries were healed by her angel's powers. Being the smug brat that she was, Kotori mocked Kurumi for failing to end her life. So Kurumi used the first bullet again on herself and her clones. The next moment, Shido was surrounded by the clones, but Kotori pushed him out of the way and got overwhelmed by them. Since was stronger than them, she broke free and eliminated all the clones before injuring the real Kurumi, who healed herself again. She then threatened to finish Kotori off, but before that happened, Kotori got hit by a headache, so Shido rushed to her side. Seeing her in that state made Kurumi laugh, but Kotori proved that she wasn't a weakling by summoning Megiddo, the canon form of Kamail, and began powering it up with her flames. Alarmed, Kurumi surrounded herself with her clones, so when Kotori took the shot, the clones were wiped out instead of Kurumi. However, Kurumi's angel also got hit, so Kurumi fell to her knees in despair as Kotori tried to taunt her into another fight. When she didn't respond, Kotori powered up Megiddo and was about to shoot Kurumi when Shido called out to her. He reminded her that they weren't like the AST, but Kotori refused to back down. That was when he realized that Kotori had been consumed by fury, and that she wasn't listening to him. Without hesitation, he ran to stand before Kurumi, even though she weakly begged him not to do something as foolish as acting as her human shield. As Kotori fired the shot, she came back to her senses, but it was too late and Shido got hit. So, as he lay on the floor injured, he got flashes of the past. A younger Kotori stood above him, crying in her astral dress as her flames enveloped both of them. When Kotori noticed he was looking at her, she called out to him, but he was too weak to speak, and eventually passed out. When Shido woke up later, he was in Fraxinus' infirmary with Yoshino, and Renie. Yoshino apologized for disturbing him, after which she left. But Toka remained since she was fast asleep. Renie arrived shortly after and explained what had happened during the fight that led to him being brought there. Shido admitted that his memory was foggy and began asking questions about everyone's well-being. To calm him down, Reina hugged him, and after he calmed down, she told him that everyone was alive and kicking. Mana and Origami were taken to the hospital by the AST, while Kurumi escaped. Shido then asked about Kotori, so Renie took him to the containment room where she was being kept. After confirming that she was fine, Shido proceeded to talk about the obvious elephant in the room. Kotori explained that she was a normal human until she came into possession of spirit powers 5 years ago. Although Shido is shocked by this, he admits to Kotori that he knew, linking his knowledge to a dream he had. In the dream, he'd been running towards Kotori, but she burned him by accident and began to cry. Kotori said she had a vague memory like that and said Shido might have seen his memories as a dream because of the Ryoku connection they had. Shido asked how she became a spirit, and she told him that she couldn't remember how or when it happened. Shido then pointed out that it was strange that neither of them remembered what happened, and Kotori theorized that their memories were erased by someone. Curious, Shido asked how Kotori had hidden her spirit powers all these years, and she revealed that it was because he'd already sealed her powers. It was at that moment that Shido realized that his regenerative powers came from Kotori's spirit powers. With that out of the way, Kotori asked Shido to approach her, and when he did, she punched him in the stomach for being stupid and standing in her line of fire during the fight. She said he could have been seriously hurt if she hadn't snapped back to her senses, and told him that he had to take her out and make her fall in love with him, so he could seal her powers again. Suddenly, Kotori fell to her knees, and when Shido rushed to her side, Reina came in and asked him to leave, assuring him that she would take care of Kotori. The next day, Shido went to the hospital to visit Mana, but he was denied entry to her room. When Origami suddenly showed up, he told her what happened, and she explained that because of the severity of Mana's injuries, she was being treated with some classified tech. She told Shido that until she was out of recovery, he couldn't see her, and warned him against doing so by force. Having no choice, Shido decided to leave, but Origami faked a fall and asked Shido to carry her to her room, so he did so reluctantly. After he dropped her off, Origami asked him to tell her what happened during the fight, explaining that the last thing she saw before she passed out was a new spirit. Shido told her that he also passed out during the fight, so he didn't know what happened. However, he inquired why she wanted to know. Origami said it was personal, but told him the story of how her parents died because of the fire spirit 5 years ago. She told him it was the reason she joined the AST, and said she wouldn't rest until she got her revenge against the fire spirit. After leaving the hospital, Shido returned to Fraxinus, and Reina and Kanazuki advised Shido to take Kotori to a water park for their date. The next day, he went swimsuit shopping with Toka and Yoshino as part of his training for his date with Kotori. While there, Toka called his attention to a swimsuit she saw, and as he was explaining the concept of swimsuits to her, Origami chimed in from nowhere. She claimed that swimsuits were a type of battle gear used against spirits, and since Toka was gullible, she believed her. She asked Shido if he brought them there to get rid of them, and Origami answered that he did. Fortunately, Shido cleared things up and helped them see that Origami was playing on their intelligence. Embarrassed, Toka called Origami out for trying to trick them, and Shido asked Origami what she was doing at the store. Origami claimed she'd been walking by when she spotted Toka and decided to come in to speak with her. She then asked Toka if she knew who the fire spirit was, but Toka refused to tell her anything. Desperate, she began begging Toka to speak up, surprising them as they had never known Origami to act that way before. Put off by Origami's strange behavior, Toka agreed to tell Origami what she knows, much to Shido's horror. However, when Toka began speaking, he was relieved when he realized that she wasn't giving Origami the correct details she needed. When Origami dismissed Toka's description as useless, Toka became annoyed and called her an ungrateful brat. Ignoring Toka, Origami informed Shido that she didn't have a swimsuit, so he advised her to get one since she was already at the store. Origami then pleaded with him to help her pick one out, prompting Toka to challenge her to a swimsuit battle. She said that whoever won would go on a date with Shido later, and Origami happily agreed, even though they never asked Shifo if he was okay with the decision. The battle to make Shido's heart race then began with each girl trying to outwit the other. Shido did his best to give honest reviews, but Origami wasn't content, and tried to pull a fast one on Toka by having Shido undress her to see her underwear. Suddenly, they heard Yoshino's cry for help, so they rushed to find her and were surprised when they saw she was struggling to put on her swimsuit. For some reason, this made Shido's heartbeat increase, and Yoshino was declared the winner of the competition. Later on board Fraxinus, Shido opened up to Kanazuki, saying he wished he could remember what happened 5 years ago and how he sealed Kotori's powers. Kanazuki surprised him by offering to show him footage of the incident, which they had obtained from a local news network. As they watched the footage, Shido saw the moment Kotori became a spirit, and also saw that a barely visible individual had given it to her. Immediately, he asked Kanazuki to pause the footage, and as he focused on the individual standing next to Kotori, he suddenly got flashes of that day and passed out. The following day, Shido was surprised to learn that Yoshino and Toka would join him and Kotori for their date. So Reina explained that she decided to include the girls in the date because she thought it was a good idea. At the water park, after Toka and Yoshino got changed, Shido told them they could go in the water, and they excitedly ran off. Kotori came out shortly after, and when Shido gave her a once-over, she called him a disgusting lecher for checking his sister out. But he denied it. As the date continued, Toka suggested that all 4 of them go on the water slide, but Yoshino rejected the idea because she was scared that Yoshinon would get swept away. Kotori also declined to go on the slide, but when Toka insisted that she and Shido go alone, she changed her mind. After their first attempt going down the slide, Kotori fearfully clung to Shido, so he asked what was wrong. Realizing that her tsundere mask was slipping, she quickly let go of him and asked him to retrieve her ribbons, which had fallen off. Shido asked if the ribbons had any significance, and she explained that the white ones represented her fragility while the black ones represented her strength. When they sat down to have lunch later, Shido noticed Kotori wasn't her usual self, so he contacted Reina and asked if her emotions had changed. Reina confirmed that they hadn't moved, making Shido conclude that his spitfire of a sister wasn't enjoying the date. Just then, Kotori got up, prompting Shido to ask where she was going, and she angrily answered that she was going to the restroom. Shortly after she walked away, Shido decided to go to the restroom, and on his way, he spotted Reina near the vending machine, tending to Kotori. When she was ready to leave, Shido followed her outside to discuss Kotori's condition. Reina revealed that ever since Kotori got her powers back, she hadn't been the same, so he asked why she had kept it from him. She told him it was Kotori's wish that he be kept in the dark, and added that she had proposed the date even though she didn't feel well. A little while later, Kotori returned to the food court to find Shido alone, so she asked where the girls were. He told her that he didn't know and suggested that they check out the amusement park, but Kotori hesitated because she believed his actions were in line with what her crew members told him. To prove that he was doing this of his own free will, Shido ditched his earpiece and grabbed Kotori's hand so they could go to the amusement park. At the amusement park, Shido and Kotori have fun going on different rides and visiting a haunted house, which makes Kotori scared, even though she pretends not to be. At the AST base, Ryuko was informed that the new weapon was missing, and she immediately deduced that Origami had taken it to go and challenge the fire spirit. Back at the park, the siblings got into a playful banter as they relaxed on the beach, but Kotori mentioned that the day had gone well. They were still talking when Shido was suddenly enveloped by a territory, as an explosion occurred where Kotori was. When the smoke cleared, he noticed that Kotori was missing, and when he looked up, he saw Origami wielding the new weapon. She instructed him to leave, saying that it would be dangerous if he stayed back, and Shido yelled at her for attacking his sister. Origami defended herself, saying the only thing she'd done was execute the fire spirit, but Kotori proved her wrong by revealing that she was still alive and kicking. When she began scolding Origami for opening fire in a public place, Origami got angry and opened fire on her again. Kotori protected herself using her flames, after which she changed into her astral dress and summoned Kamael. As the girls clashed against each other, Shido was forcefully pushed away. As the fight between Kotori and Origami intensified, Kotori felt the familiar pain in her head and slowed down, allowing Origami to trap her in a territory and fire an energy beam at her. However, Kotori escaped unhurt and began attacking Origami relentlessly until she was almost consumed by her powers. When Origami fell, Kotori summoned Megiddo and used it to threaten her, but Origami didn't respond. Considering her to be weak, Kotori prepared to shoot her, but Shido rushed towards them and screamed at her to stop. Kotori asked Origami how she discovered her identity, and Origami ignored the question to scream profanities at her. She said the fire spirit was responsible for her parents' deaths, and until she was dead, she wouldn't rest. Shocked by this revelation, Kotori fell to the ground, unable to accept the possibility that she might be a murderer. Origami then powered up the white licorice and captured Kotori in a territory, but before she could open fire, Shido came to stand between them. Origami asked him to move, but he refused, telling her that he wouldn't sit back and watch her Isekai his little sister. He told her that she would never recover if she became a murderer, but all his words fell on deaf ears, as Origami was too blinded by her rage. Refusing to give up, Shido told Origami that she was after the fire spirit and not Kotori, which confused her. He tried to convince her that Kotori was innocent, but Origami told him that as long as Kotori was a spirit, she didn't deserve to live. She asked him to move out of the way, but Shido refused and kept pleading with her to reconsider her decision. For a moment, Origami considered his words carefully, but then she summoned a territory around him and moved to attack Kotori. Just then, Toka and Yoshino arrived, stopping her before she could complete her task, but Origami retaliated. Fortunately, they dodged the attack before they could get hit, and Toka instructed Shido to take Kotori away while they fought Origami. So he did. When he felt he was far enough, he decided to seal her powers away, so he confessed to Kotori and asked how she felt about him so he could proceed. Kotori hesitated to answer, giving Origami the chance to get closer and open fire on them. Eventually, she admitted her feelings for him, so Shido leaned in and kissed her. But when this happened, Shido's memories returned. In the memory, the newly transformed Kotori walked towards Shido, who was lying unconscious on the ground, and kissed him. Immediately, his wounds healed. Kotori's astral dress disappeared, and Shido woke up like a sleeping beauty. He was also the one who gave Kotori the black ribbons she always wore on board Fraxinus. Back in the present, Kotori and Shido are shocked that their memories had returned. But their excitement over it was short-lived when another set of missiles nearly hit them. Shido then tried to run with Kotori, but another missile hit behind him, and the explosion caused him to sustain injuries. Shido then put Kotori down and turned to face Origami, saying he was now the fire spirit she wanted to get rid of, since Kotori's powers were sealed inside him. He then explained that 5 years ago, even though Kotori caused the fire that destroyed the neighborhood, she was the one who murdered her parents. Origami refused to believe him, so he revealed that on that day there had been another spirit present, stating that it was that spirit who turned Kotori. Still, Origami refused to believe him, so Shido told her that she could end his life if she still wanted her revenge. This made her hesitate, but before she could decide on what to do, she suddenly felt weak and fell to the ground. This was because she'd reached her limit for using the white licorice, but she was still determined to finish her mission, so she pulled out a gun. As Shido tried to convince her to change her mind, she suddenly fainted from exhaustion. Later, after everything, Kotori asked Shido if the things he confessed to her before their kiss were true, and he confirmed that they were, making her feel shy. The shyness soon turned to annoyance when Shido added that the feelings were the type one felt for a sibling, earning himself a kick. One morning, a loud bang forced Shido out of bed, and when he went to check out what was wrong, he saw that it was Toka randomly freaking out over the fear of him not liking her again. He calmed her down by telling her he'd never stop liking her, but then Yoshino called his attention to her puppet, which was stuck in the tub. After helping her get the puppet out of the tub, he went back to help out his other disaster mistress again. Meanwhile, the board of directors decided that Origami would be put through disciplinary action, and her friend tried to argue on her behalf, but they were interrupted when a man named Isaac made a surprise appearance. Back at Shido's place, Kotori explained to Shido that a spirit's power returns when they become emotionally stable, and then she chewed him out for focusing on his Gunner dreams instead of his maidens. He explained that he overslept because of all the studying he did the previous night, and she reminded him to put on his earpiece before heading out to do some work. Some hours later, Shido got a text from Origami, so he left the breakfast table to meet up with her. When he met her outside the house, they noticed the people in the area were staring at them, so he suggested they take their meeting somewhere private. The white-haired goofball seized the opportunity and took him to the female bathroom, where she immediately started removing her plot armors. Shido stopped her and asked what happened with her agency, causing her to reveal that she was issued a 2-month suspension for her actions. She then said she wasn't convinced that Ifrit was innocent, because he presented no solid evidence to prove that the spirit didn't unalive her parents. Shido tried to mansplain, but she said there was no need because she had no intention of ending his sister. She brought up how she tried to destroy him and Kotori a few months ago, but the virgin hero said he'd still love to remain friends with her despite that. Before he could leave, she stopped him by asking if he was really human. Back at Shido's place, Toka's mood level started spiraling when she watched a stupid telenovela show that let her believe that Shido would soon dump her. She rushed out to look for him while Kotori and her agent scanned the area to search for him as well. In the ladies' room, Origami brought up numerous scenarios where Shido should have died and said she'd be sent to end him if he's deemed a spirit. However, Shido claimed that he's human, and Origami said she'd believe him before walking out of the room. She suddenly came back to ask him to accompany her to a shopping trip later that day, and Shido agreed. Meanwhile, Toka ran through the streets with tears in her eyes like a depressed hooker, and she eventually met Shido outside the ladies' room. When she saw Origami come out of the bathroom as well, she started to imagine all kinds of sus scenarios between them, which made her energy spike as she angrily ran off. Shido chased her to calm her down, but she called him a filthy cheater. Just then, Kotori called Shido and told him to calm Toka down by going on a date with her. Toka agreed on the condition that he'd buy her favorite bread, but the plan went off the rails when they saw that all the bread shops had mysteriously ran out of Toka's favorite. It turned out to be the glorious doofus Kyahi, who bought all the bread in the area, so Kotori commanded him to hand it to Shido immediately. Some minutes later, Shido and Toka cheerfully walked home together while she snacked on the bread. When they got home, Shido noticed that his suitcase was broken, so he went out to fix it, and he got a call from Origami on his way out. Under the influence of another trashy soap opera, Toka rushed out with tears in her eyes again, and when she saw Shido meeting up with Origami, she imagined a scene of him breaking up with her to elope with Origami, causing her to freak out. As Toka ran through the city, the quake alarm started ringing, and Shido chased Toka to a park where he saw her in her spirit form. She accused Shido of trying to leave her for Origami, but he explained that he was only trying to prepare for their upcoming school trip. Just then, her chakra went haywire and sent a blast which floored Shido. At the Fraxinus airship, Rein informed Kotori that Toka's overwhelming aura would soon destroy the city, and Kotori said she had faith in Shido to fix it. Meanwhile, Shido walked courageously through the violent waves of Toka's aura, while saying some rizful words to her, and he managed to put an end to the danger by sharing a kiss with her. Later that evening, Isaac's assistant named Ellen gave him all the information she had on Toka, and he told her to continue investigating her. Meanwhile, Kurumi was on a rooftop somewhere, and she created a clone of herself before stating her new goal, which was to personally destroy the spirit that gave birth to all other spirits. Some days later, Toka put on a male uniform and made all of her classmates cringe as she tried to gaslight them into believing she was a boy so she could share a room with Shido during their trip. Their teacher Tamei explained to her that wearing men's clothes doesn't change the fact that she wasn't permitted to share the boys' room, but Origami interrupted by shockingly asking her to agree to Toka's goofy request. Toka asked her love rival what she was after, and Origami replied that she was moved by the perseverance she was showing before claiming that her efforts makes her worthy of sharing a room with the men. After hearing this, Toka's face got red as she asked Origami not to expect anything in return, and Origami said she wouldn't. Tamai tried to interrupt their yapping by reminding them that she was the teacher, but Origami ignored her and said it would be best to turn Shido into a female to balance things out. Shido said she was talking nonsense, but the simp girl started grabbing his arm while asking to take a bath with him. Toka ran interference and pointed out that Shido wouldn't be in the same room as her if he decided to cosplay as a girl. Origami said she'd be a strong, independent man, and Toka called her a scheming cow before Shido told both of them to shut up. Shido revealed that none of the rooms will be co-ed, and said there would be no gender swaps as well, but the love rivals still stared at each other intensely. To settle the matter, Tamai told the girls that they could take any seat they wanted on the plane despite not being able to share rooms with men, and then suggested sitting next to Shido. This only made the love rivals bicker even more, while Shido got frustrated by their dumbness. On the Fraxinus airship, Kotori told her comrades that the destination of the school trip had been changed from Okinawa to Arubi Island, and she expressed confusion over the fact that the change came from nowhere. Ryan explained that a travel agency named Cross Travel Corp offered to cover all costs under the condition that the school would help their advertising campaign, but then she said they had reason to be concerned because the Cross Travel Corp was owned by DEM Industries. Meanwhile, Shido and the girls were on the plane together, and the airhead Princess Toka started ranting about how Origami fooled her by taking the seat closest to the window because it was preventing her from seeing the scenery. Origami argued that it was her fault for not picking a seat beforehand, and during this commotion, Tomei repeatedly apologized to the aircrew for her idiot students while Rin sipped some coffee on a seat behind them. Origami tried to get Shido's attention by telling him to look at the clouds through the window, and Toka tried to counter by showing him the low-budget red carpet that was on the ground. But Shido couldn't care less about their ramblings because he wanted to get some sleep. Just then, Ellen took a picture of them, and when Tuka asked who she was, Shido told her she's a photographer from the travel agency. Ellen started smiling mischievously as she stared at the photo, but some students interrupted her by pestering her with questions about her camera. It was then announced that the aircraft would soon begin its descent toward the airport, and as the students looked through the window, they were stunned by how beautiful the island was. When they arrived at the airport, Tuka got excited when she saw the sea, and Shido pointed out that it was her first time visiting the sea. Tuka said she was hyped because the sea was much bigger than the pool they previously visited, which she loved, and then they noticed that Ellen was taking photos of them from afar. Meanwhile, some shady-looking men were watching Tuka on a screen, and one of them pointed out that she's the princess. The boss then asked if she was really a spirit, and his female comrade Ellen told him not to be fooled because the airhead Barbie was a Class 1 hazard. The boss then asked where the wizard was, and Ellen replied that she'd only met her once, and added that she wouldn't pose a threat to their plans because she was wearing sunglasses during their meeting. Meanwhile, Tomei announced to the class that they were going to be headed to the Arubi Island Museum, and all the extras in class started to mouth off about how boring it was going to be. Shido alerted Tuka that the class were about to leave them behind, but she claimed that someone was watching them and ran off in the opposite direction. Shido chased her down, and Ellen reported to her colleagues that Toka had left her group before telling them to keep an eye on her, while cutting off all radio connections in the area. Once again, her scheming was interrupted by a group of students who pestered her with questions and dragged her away. As the spy boss watched Toka, he claimed that a group called the Bandersnatches could easily catch her because she was a lone girl, but then his assistant directed his attention to the heavily windy atmosphere in the area. Shido and Toka struggled through the wind, and when Shido said they needed to rejoin their group, Toka apologized for leading them astray because of her hunch. Shido tried to find a path to the museum, but the wind suddenly got more intense, and they noticed a massive dark cloud forming in the sky. Just then, a trash can came flying towards them, and Tuka pushed Shido out of the way before getting bonked in the head several times by a bunch of trash cans. Shido noticed that Toka was on spaghetti legs, so he piggybacked her, but then he saw some flashes colliding in the sky, which made him wonder if Goku and Vegeta were having a duel on the island. Suddenly, the flashes pushed him to the ground, and out of them came a pair of spirits named Yuzuru and Kaguya. On the Fraxinus airship, Kotori told her associates that she was going for a meeting being held by Rounds, and they told her not to take too long. When one of them brought up the fact that Ryan wasn't around, Kyuhei started geeking out about how he was determined to help Shido enjoy his school trip to the fullest. After Kotori left, Kyuhei got jumpy again, as he told the crew to set sail to Arumi Island. Back on the island, Kaguya complimented Yuzuru for keeping up with her attack, and claimed that she'd end her, but Yuzuru replied that she'd defeat Kaguya in this 100th duel they were having. However, Kaguya said she'd prove that she's the true Yamai, but Yuzuru refused her statement, and they argued for the next several minutes. Shido was watching their rap battle when Ryan contacted him and asked where he was. Shido couldn't muster a proper answer, and the spirit girls caused another windy explosion as they prepared to resume their duel. Just when they were about to clash again, Shido yelled for them to stop, and when they saw that it was an ugly insect that interfered with their battle, Kaguya asked him why he interrupted them. As the two spirits started bickering again, Kaguya came up with an idea for a battle which she thought would finally settle the score between them. Some minutes later, Aragim was stunned to see Shido getting pampered by Yuzuru and Kaguya while they asked him which of them was more attractive. At the same time, Ryan informed Tomei that Yuzuru and Kaguya were transfer students, and when Tomei said she hadn't heard anything about them, Ryan explained that their enrollment process was rushed because the administration didn't have time. Ryan then said she'd look after them while Tomei takes care of the rest of the class. When Rin entered the next room, she saw the spirit twins treating Shido like their personal teddy bear. Earlier, Yuzuru and Kaguya made an agreement that their next duel would be a contest of who could seduce Shido the fastest, and in the present, that kept asking him who was cuter, until he cut them off by asking why they were dueling. Yuzuru and Kaguya explained that they initially started out as one spirit which was named Yamai before they split, and they were destined to unite as a singular spirit again which would only have the mind of one of them. Yuzuru added that they were dueling to choose who would remain and become the true Yamai, and Kaguya revealed that the loser would disappear, causing Shido to be worried. He got even more worried when Ryan informed him that she lost contact with Fraxinus, and then she asked the girls to follow her so she could give them advice on how to capture Shido's heart. Some hours later, the spirit twins forced Shido to take a bath with them, and during the bath they started grabbing his Excalibur while arguing over who was using the best seduction moves. They bickered for minutes until Toka stormed into the bath and saw them, causing her to freak out. When Shido asked her what she was doing in the men's bath, she said she followed the signs on the curtain, causing him to realize that the thirsty spirit duo switched the men's curtain for the women's in order to trick him. Suddenly, more girls showed up and Toka distracted them while Shido ran away. However, she ended up bumping into him during his escape, causing him to fall into the cold river. Elsewhere, Ellen told her comrades that they'd move on with their plans that night and instructed them to put the Bandersnatches on standby. A while later, Kaguya and Yuzuru were using Diddy moves on Shido in bed, and when he started to complain, Kaguya tried to gaslight him using puppy eyes. Meanwhile, Toka and Origami were having their own little argument outside over the best sus move to make Shido go crazy, and things got even more heated in Shido's room, when Yuzuru suddenly started taking off her plot armors. Yuzuru then started getting freaky with his man-meat under the sheets, and when Kaguya asked what she was doing, she told her it was beyond anything her pea-brain could comprehend. This ticked Kaguya off so much that she went under the sheets as well and joined Yuzuru in playing around with his magic stick. Meanwhile, Toka stopped Origami from going to Shido's room by telling her that she'd look after Shido herself, but Origami told her to back off because her glorious king was waiting for her. The love rivals had a standoff until 3 pesky classmates of theirs called them to settle the score in their room. Ellen, who was watching the whole thing from a corner, reported to her colleague that their target had entered the room. She then brought up the fact that Origami was around and she was about to give her ally more instructions, but as she opened the room door, a pillow came flying to her face. Ellen fell back and the 3 pesky students asked her what she was doing there. At the same time, Yuzuru and Kaguya were going commando on Shido and violently ripping off all the smelly sleep gear he was wearing until Tamae came knocking on his door. In an attempt to escape his molesters, Shido ends up colliding with Tamae by the door, and when she looks down, she sees his bare baby elephant staring right back at her, causing both of them to scream. Meanwhile, the spy boss asked his assistant if they got any word from the chief, but he replied that they haven't heard anything, and they also haven't detected any movement in the area. The boss then ordered him to bring the Bandersnatches back because they wouldn't make any progress on that night. The next morning, Shido was on call with Rein by the shore of the beach, and she told him that he'd spend his free time that day with the Yamai sisters at the private beach. She also informed him that she'd given Kaguya and Yuzuru earpieces, so she could advise them as well, and in response, Shido asked if he should pretend like he didn't know about the earpieces, and pretend to have fallen for them. Rein said that's exactly what he's meant to do, and explained that she'd be able to control them if they think her advice was causing some progress in their mission to make Shido their personal love slave. Shido added that it might also allow them to seal the powers of the sisters, and she replied that kissing just one of them may put them in an extremely precarious situation. She revealed that she still couldn't make contact with Fraxinus, but claimed that this could be their last chance to seal the elusive Yamai sisters, and Shido said he was determined to seal them before they complete their duel, even though he's scared. She then told him that the girls were done changing, and instructed him to compliment their swimsuits when they arrived. Just then, the Yamai sisters arrived and Shido immediately pointed out that their swimsuits looked more dazzling than Gucci clothes, causing Kaguya's face to turn red while Yuzuru thanked him in a calm manner. The ladies then got some instructions from Rein through their earphones, and then both sisters asked Shido to apply some sunscreen on their bodies. Some minutes later, the Yamai sisters lay on the mat with their plots exposed as they begged Shido to rub some sunscreen on them. Being a typical virgin loser, Shido was worried about the fact that he'd have to touch them, and the 2 ladies secretly plotted to get Shido excited when he starts rubbing them. When Shido approached them, Kaguya immediately jumped on top of Yuzuru in a way that had their milk factories rubbing on each other, and she asked Shido to join in on the fun. The poor idiot's non-existent brain was about to explode because of what he was witnessing, but Kaguya pressured him to start rubbing her anyway. Immediately, he placed his hand on Kaguya's back. She made a sus girl noise that made him pull away and apologize. However, she told him to continue, so he applied sunscreen to her back until Yuzuru decided that it was her turn to get felt up by Shido. Yuzuru switched to the top position and asked Shido to rub some sunscreen on her. As Shido applied the sunscreen on her, she expressed her pleasure with loud noises, and eventually the sisters started fighting again over who wanted it more. When the both of them turned their back, Shido massaged both of them, giving them so much pleasure that they reached the gates of Valhalla. At the same time, Toka and Origami were taking a dip in the sea while Ellen spied on them, and Ellen reported to her comrade named Arbitel that their target was on the move before asking if he could track them. Arata informed her that they were headed towards a private beach which was 800 meters northwest of her location, and she told him that she'd head there immediately before instructing him to get the Bandersnatches ready. Ellen tried to follow Toka and Origami, but she fell into a pit trap which the 3 pesky girls made for her, and she tried to explain to them that she was rushing somewhere, but the girls forced her into playing a sand game with them. When Toka arrived at the private beach, they told her that Shido and sisters got lost and stumbled onto that beach, and while Kaguya called Toka her master, Yuzuru bonded with her own master, who was Origami. Origami then asked what they were doing there, and Rein made a surprise entrance as she claimed that they were there to play some beach volleyball. When Shido asked Rini why she came out, Rini said it was because of Toka and Origami's surprise visit, and she explained that Shido would be able to get closer to the Yamai sisters by teaming teaming up with them. Ryan split them into teams of 3, and on one side of the volleyball court was Shido and the Yomai sisters, while Ryan, Origami, and Toka stood on the other side as their opponents. She then set a rule that the losing team would have to do whatever the winners asked, no matter how sus the request is, and Shido immediately realized that he was cooked. Toka started the match in a dramatic fashion by firing a shot that was so powerful that it destroyed the ball when it made impact with the ground, and she proceeded to fire several more destructive shots, which disorganized Shido's team so badly that the sisters started fighting again. In the next round, Toka blasted a shot which knocked Shido out, and in retaliation, the sisters used a powerful combo move that sent the ball crashing deep into the opposing team's court. Yuzuru and Kaguya cheerfully celebrated their win together, while Shido lay helplessly on the ground. A while later, Kaguya met Shido privately and goofed off for a bit before asking him if he's going to finish their duel by choosing between her and Yuzuru the next day. When Shido said he would, Kaguya asked him to choose Yuzuru, and in the same manner, Yuzuru asked him to choose Kaguya as the winner instead of her. When he asked why, both girls called out all the positive qualities of their sister, and when he asked why, they both claimed that they wanted their sister to live. Bro was baffled by this, and they made things even harder for him by threatening to destroy the island and his friends if he didn't choose who they asked. Afterwards, Shido stared into the ocean as he thought about how crazy it was that they were willing to disappear for each other. Later that night, Toka met up with Shido and asked him to see the stars with her. On the Fraxinus airship, the crew members noticed that they were unable to establish communication with Shido or Rin, and one of them presumed that it was due to jamming. As they wondered who was jamming their signal, Kyuhei walked into the room in his night clothes like a typical lazy bum. Meanwhile, Ellen watched Toka and Shido, and she instructed Aratatel to keep a Bandersnatcher at the hotel since Aragami could pose a threat to them. Toka walked with Shido to a spot on the beach where she asked what was troubling him, and Shido responded by asking her to help him. When he told her about the Yamai sisters' situation, she said she understood because she'd willingly sacrifice herself for Shido if she was in a similar situation. Just then, Kaguya showed up and was fuming when she heard that Yuzuru opted to sacrifice herself, and Yuzuru arrived in a similarly dramatic manner. The sisters then transformed into their spirit forms, and this time they summoned their spirit weapons as they prepared to face off against each other. Meanwhile, Origami saw a robot monster outside the hotel, and just when Ryan showed up to ask what she was doing there, the robot monster charged at them. At the same time, Kyuhei took charge as he ordered the crew to transform the Fraxinus airship into battle mode, and as it charged forward, the spy boss ordered his own crew to attack them. Back on the beach, Kaguya and Yuzuru started another epic clash and Shido yelled for them to stop. Meanwhile, the enemy spy ship fired a massive blast at the Fraxinus airship, and the crew started panicking, but Kyuhei was surprisingly calm. When one of their crew members announced that another shot was coming, Kyuhei instructed them to disengage invisible mode and direct all the energy from the basic realizer to the protective territory. The crew members followed the instructions, and this allowed the ship to tank the blast. Kawi Hohei then started doing weird JoJo dances as he expressed his excitement about the battle they were currently in. Just then, a crew member named Shizaki finally made contact with Kotori, and when Kotori asked what was going on, she informed her that they were being attacked before begging her to help them. However, Kotori said there was no need to worry because Kyuhei was there with them. On the beach, Kaguya fired a wind blast at Yuzuru using her weapon, but Yuzuru countered by dispersing the wind using her chains, and the two spirits started colliding fiercely with each other in the air again. Shido tried to remind them that they love each other, but they didn't listen to him, and just then, Toka informed him that they had company. Shido noticed that they were surrounded by robotic beasts, and as he wondered what they were, Ellen came out of the forest to reveal that they were Bandersnatchers. Meanwhile, Kyohoe instructed his crew members to deploy protective territories at some coordinates which he called out, and this caused some energy to gather around the airship. At the beach, Ellen told Toka that she was waiting for her to be separated from everyone, and then she said she was surprised about the fact that Yuzuru and Kaguya turned out to be berserker spirits. When Shido asked if she was part of the anti-spirit team, she claimed that she wasn't affiliated with them, and when the Bandersnatches tried to attack them, Toka went into her spirit mode and blocked them off with her sword. Ellen then asked Takuka to come with her while promising to take care of her, but Tuka gave her an emphatic middle finger by pointing her sword at her. Shido tried to remind her that she wasn't meant to use her weapon against an unarmed human, but Toka said she sensed that Ellen was an overpowered being. Just then, Ellen transformed into her battle form and ordered the Bandersnatches to stay back so she could test how strong the Airhead Princess was for herself. Ellen pulled out a sword, and Toka charged right in to attack her. Meanwhile, one of the Fraxinus crew members was surprised that their hull intensity had reached 100%, so another crew member explained to her that its strength increased by order of magnitude. One of them argued that it would leave the ship open to enemy attacks, but Kyuhei ordered him to follow some new coordinates if he didn't want to die. When they fired their beam, Shiozaki was surprised that the beam was perfect, and everyone realized that the goofy Lolicon might actually be as smart as Batman. Back on the beach, Ellen blocked Toka's first attack and pushed her back. Toka tried to slash her several more times, but Ellen sidestepped her before blocking her once again. Ellen then started rage-baiting her by calling her a pathetic weasel, and she pushed Toka back while saying that it was time to end things. When she lifted her sword for an attack, Toka tried to block using her sword, but Ellen shattered Toka's sword with one swing and sent her flying with an elbow jab. Shido tried to rush in to assist her, but the Bandersnatches stopped him and Ellen called Toka a disappointment before ordering the Bandersnatches to put Toka to sleep. Shido desperately yelled Toka's name while some Bandersnatches picked her up, and as he started to wonder if he couldn't do anything to help her, he remembered when Kurumi was tormenting Toka in a similar way. He boldly claimed that he'd never let them take Toka, and he yelled her name while raising his hand into the air. Surprisingly, the Bandersnatches that were holding Toka got ripped apart, and Ellen was stunned when she saw that Shido was now holding Toka's sword. After successfully tanking another enemy blast, Kyuhei finally decided to grow some marbles, and he ordered his crew to fire back. The blast was so powerful that it had the enemy spies wetting their trousers, and their boss commanded his crew members to go full speed ahead as he intended to take Fraxinus down for good. On the beach, Toka asked Shido how he had her sword Sandalphon, and Ellen followed up by asking Shido what he was. Shido replied that he's only a human, but this only inspired Ellen to make a new decision, which was to capture both of them. On the Fraxinus airship, a crew member informed Kyuhei that their shot missed the enemy ship, and another crewman raised an alarm over the fact that the enemy was fast approaching them. Kyuhei realized that they were trying to rip their territory by force, so he instructed his men to dedicate all their power to their territory. As they worked on his most recent command, Kyuhei also instructed them to dedicate some power to magic regeneration, and one of them said it would make them lose control of the power. But Kyuhei said it was fine because of some special headphones he had. When the territories of the two ships collided, it created a magic explosion, and the enemy spy leader commanded his crew to plunge ahead since he believed they had the stronger territory. Back on the beach, Ellen ordered her Bandersnatches to capture Shido, so they charged at him and he prepared to fight back using the sword. At the same time, the enemy airship was hit with a surprise attack and a crew member informed the boss that their control room was on fire, causing him to order them to put it out. Meanwhile, the Bandersnatches that tried to attack Shido suddenly shut down, and when Ellen informed her allies, they informed her that their control room was attacked. As she talked to her comrades, Shido grabbed Toka and ran away. Ellen ordered her scraps to chase after them, but they only fell apart even more, and when she tried to run after them herself, she fell into a deep pit which was dug by the three pesky students from earlier. Meanwhile, the enemy airship started retreating, and the Fraxinus aircrew noticed that Kyuhei created a secret weapon, which exploded on impact with the enemy ship. At the same time, Shido and Toka ran to the spot where the Yamai sisters were fighting, and Shido told them to stop fighting so that they could both make it out alive. He tried to distract them by waving Sandalphon around aimlessly, and Toka stopped him before expressing how envious she was of the fact that Shido cared so much for the sisters. She revealed that it was his wish that created Sandalphon, and she told him that it was up to him to make it come true. Her words left him confused, but then she held his hand and asked him to embrace his wish so that the angel would answer him. Just then, the sword started to glow, and the two of them swung the sword together, creating a massive shockwave, which caught the attention of the Yamai sisters. Shido asked them to stop fighting, but they both told him to stay out of it. Shido then claimed that he'd choose who the true Yamai was, and proceeded to choose both of them. The Yamai sisters were disgusted by the virgin's words, but he said they had the right to choose their future despite the fact that they both cared about each other 1,000,000 times more than themselves. He then offered them the option of giving up their spirit powers so they could both survive, and when they argued against it, he begged them to give him a chance to save them. Kaguya told him to shut up, but he continued yapping intensely until he eventually collapsed in Toka's arms. Afterwards, Kaguya asked Yuzuru what she'd do if Shido was telling the truth, and she replied that it would be wonderful. Yuzuru then asked Kaguya what she'd like to do if they both survived, and Kaguya replied that she'd like to try out Toka's favorite bread. When Kaguya asked Yuzuru the same question, she replied that she'd love to attend school, and Kaguya presumed that she'd instantly become the hottest baddie on the block. However, Yuzuru said she believed Kaguya would be the one guys drooled over, and they both discussed fondly about their plans to explore the town later, before Kaguya tearfully admitted that she wanted to live and stay with Yuzuru. In response, Yuzuru tearfully said she wanted to stay with Kaguya, and just then the enemy ship showed up. The enemy spy leader intended to capture the Yamai sisters, but Yuzuru and Kaguya used a powerful combo move to destroy his airship once and for all. Some minutes later, the sisters thanked Shido for stopping them, and they both surprised him with a kiss. However, their armor vanished, and Shido tried to explain that it was because their posters were sealed. But Toka showed up and beat him up. Elsewhere, Ellen reported the events of the day to Isaac before asking him if it was possible for a human to have spirit powers. Some days later, Origami was informed by Major Tsukamoto that her suspension was officially lifted, and before the Major could give her any more instructions, a squad captain named Kusakabe burst into the room and read out some new instructions issued to them before claiming they were basically selling out to DEM. Another officer in the room brought up the fact that Kusakabe hadn't managed to capture a single spirit despite all the numerous spacequakes in the area, and said her opinion stank more than a One Piece fan's breath. When Kusakabe asked who she was, she introduced herself as a new member of AST named Jessica. Meanwhile, the students of Shido's school were gathered in the assembly hall, and a quirky girl announced that the organizer of an event called the Tenno Festival, which they'd be holding that year, would be Shido, and the virgin boy was shocked to hear this. When Toka asked what a Tenno Festival was, an ugly classmate replied that it's a giant festival hosted by 10 schools in Tengu City. Sometime later, Shido was walking along the road with Yoshino, and he told her about how they were already working him to death despite the fact that it was only day 1 of the festival. He thanked her for accompanying him, and she said it was okay because Toka was starving back home. Just then, the spacequake alarm started ringing, and when Shido called out to Kotori, she said Fraxinus would transport him to the affected area in a second. When he arrived at the affected area, he saw a girl named Miku ripping off one of Sabrina Carpenter's biggest hits, and Kotori informed him that she's a spirit who first appeared 6 months ago, whose powers were still a mystery to them. She advised him to stay on his toes when he talks to her, but the first thing the doofus does is interrupt her singing by knocking over an empty soda can. Unable to see him, Miku searched the stands to see who was creeping up on her, and Kotori advised Shido to say exactly what she told him to. Fraxinus cast a vote for the best pickup line to use on Miku, but when Shido approached her using those words, the squad noticed that her mood and other parameters were sharply declining. Kotori said the pickup line was a bad choice, and she told Shido to go for an alternative one, so he told Miku that she looked stunning. His negative riz made her stats fall even faster, and the Fraxinus crew realized that Miku was beginning to hate Shido. Kotori then told him to try out the third pickup line which they prepared, and when he said it, the crew were stunned to see that it made her love him even less than cockroaches. Miku suddenly fired a huge shockwave from her mouth, which pushed him off the stage, and Shido held on for dear life as she claimed that the reason she didn't crush his hand so he'd fall to his death was because the bottom of her shoes would get stained with his virgin cologne. Just then, some AST agents showed up, and this excited Miku because she saw them as an excited audience. She flew in behind Origami, causing Origami to fire a barrage of attacks at her, but she dodged all of her attacks while teasing her in the process. Miku created a force field which blocked all the attacks from the other agents, and Jessica decided to join the battle. Noticing that Shido was still in the area, Kotori pulls him out so that he wouldn't get hurt in all the craziness. Meanwhile, Miku blocked several more heavy attacks from the agents before creating a massive shockwave that allowed her to escape the area. Some days later, Origami and Toka were doing a tug-of-war with Shido's body, and suddenly Miku walked into their class. A while later, Kyuhei showed Shido and Kotori a recording of one of Mike's secret concerts, and Kotori said she never thought Miku was a spirit. When Shido asked if she knew Miku, Kotori said she'd only heard a few of her songs on television, and revealed that she made her debut about a half a year ago. She also revealed that the internet was calling Miku's voice a drug for the ears, and said her identity was still a mystery despite all her hit songs because she was yet to make a single public appearance. Kyuhei said according to the internet, Miku despises men and her concert was for women only, and a nerdy crew member said Miku was rumored to have done private workout sessions with several of her female fans. Shido's dysfunctional brain cells couldn't comprehend what they were trying to say, so Kotori made it clear by saying that Miku was a lesbian. Hearing this, Shido asked how he would go about handling her situation, but Kotori responded by giving her guards the signal to make Shido put on a female cosplay. As Shido changed into a female uniform, Kotori reminded him that his mission was to approach Miku while everyone was setting up for the festival. Shido asked if she was sure it'll work, and Kotori assured him that it would, because the whole crew already told her that his female form looked stunning. As he finished up his makeup, she told him not to forget his voice changer, so he placed a small device on his throat, which gave him a female voice. Afterwards, Lady Shido lied to the girls in his class that the Shido they knew had run off somewhere, and when they asked who he was, he claimed he was Shido's cousin named Shiori. Later that day, Shido met up with Miku in the stage area, and Miku cheerfully asked for her name. The dummy nearly outed himself by using a male identifier to introduce himself, but Miku merely translated it as an attempt at cracking a joke. Miku said she liked funny girls, and the crew at Fraxinus observed that her love and mood parameters were stable. Kotori said she was relieved that Miku liked tomboys, and then she asked Shido to keep talking like a boy. She brought out 3 pickup line options for her crew to vote for, and the votes ended in a tie between 2 of the options. Kaori realized that it would also be a good chance to gauge Miku's boundaries, so she told him to say the riskiest option in a funny way. Lady Shido then asked Miku if she'd sell her whites to her for 30,000 yen, and Miku replied that she'd take her undergarments as payment since she didn't collect cash. Shido started freaking out, so Miku calmed him down by saying she was only kidding. She then asked if the uniform he was wearing was from Raisin High, and when he confirmed that it was, she introduced herself as a student of Rindoji Academy for Women. Shido introduced himself as Shiori, and then asked what she was doing in an area that was supposed to be off-limits. Miku said she loved being on stage and claimed that the reason she loved it so much was because people came just to hear her sing. Miku then told Shido that the time they spend in that area would be their secret, and said it was time for them to start heading back. As they walked back, some wooden planks fell on Shido, so Miku covered up his injured hand with her hanky. The next day, Kotori told Shido during breakfast that his next mission was to have afternoon tea with Miku, and Toka expressed her interest in learning how to play drums. A while later, Shido dressed up in his female outfit again, and met Miku at her school to have afternoon tea with her. During the tea party, Shido complimented Miku's tea, and they spent the next several hours talking cheerfully, causing Kotori to be confident that Shido would seal Miku's powers in no time. Afterwards, Miku asked Shido to transfer to her school, and when Shido didn't agree, She tried to use her powers to make her agree, but Shido still said no. Miku then issued some more weird commands to Shido, but he didn't do any of them. So she asked if he was a spirit or a wizard because a normal human could never disobey her. Following Kotori's command, Shido confessed that he's a human with the ability to seal spirit powers, and he told her that she'd be able to live in peace if she lets him seal her powers. Miku said she believed her, but also claimed that there was no need to seal her powers, since she was happy with her current life, and Shido brought up the spacequake she caused earlier while trying to convince her that she couldn't control her powers. But Miku threw a curveball by revealing that she did it on purpose because she wanted to sing in that arena. Shido said her friends could have died during the quake, but Miku said they'd gladly die for her because they loved her. Shido then said he hated her, and proceeded to say more spiteful words to her, which made Miku challenge her to a game. Miku said she'd let him seal her powers if Raisin takes first place at the festival, and then revealed that she'd be performing on stage that day. Shido argued that she had an unfair advantage, but she said he was lucky to even get a chance at all, before revealing that if her school wins the festival, he and the girls would become her property. Meanwhile, Kusakabe tried to argue with Jessica about her plans to fight the spirits during the Tenno festival, but Jessica dismissed her complaints before commanding her not to tell Origami about the operation. Meanwhile, a girl named Mana woke up in a hospital bed, and she immediately remembered Kurumi using her for target practice a while ago. Just then, some agents walked into the room and she asked them who they were. At the same time, Shido's classmates heard that their new pal Shiori was putting her dignity on the line, so they promised to help get her out in one piece. They accepted Shido and the girls into their gang, and Lady Shido was surprised when he saw that Toka was also joining the band. When one of the girls asked Shido which instrument he plays, he said he's a bit of a guitarist, and two members of the pesky trio introduced themselves as a bassist and a drummer. Toka was devastated by the fact that someone already took the instrument she wanted to play, which she referred to as whacking things. Shido explained that they couldn't let a talentless newbie like her handle the drums for such an important event, and then he promised to let her play it next time. As they wondered which instrument the airhead princess could play, the pesky trio presented her with a basic tambourine, which they called a legendary instrument that even Michael Jackson couldn't play. This made Toka happy, and Shido pointed out that all that was left for them was a vocalist. Hearing this, Origami picked up the mic and sang her favorite Celine Dion song in a manner that left everyone impressed. A while later, Origami was at the anti-spirit squad locker room, and Kusakabe started venting about how the Americans in the agency were giving her a headache. Kusakabe then silently revealed to her that Charlie team would storm Tengu Square the next day and that their objective was to capture Toka and Shido. Origami was stunned to hear this, and Kusakabe gave her even more of an assist by leaving a classified storage locker open for her as she walked away. The next day, the MC announced the start of the 25th annual Tenno Festival, and the students from different schools around Tengu City started to have a good time. Toka put on some dazzling maid clothes, and the Yamai sisters teased Shido because of how good he looked in girly clothes. Shido shyly asked what the point of the maid cafe was, and his classmates responded that it was necessary for them to defeat Rindoji. She then started introducing the maid girls in a goofy way before Shido pointed out that Origami wasn't with them. Toka guessed that she accidentally overslept, and Kaguya told them that it was time to start serving up customers. As they stared out the window, the ladies told Shido that he was the head maid, and just then, a whole pack of maids arrived to ask Shido for some orders. Shido simply told them to do their best, causing them to cheer. A while later, Shido spotted Kurumi chilling in the corner, but she immediately disappeared, causing him to think that he was only imagining things. Just then, Miku arrived and complimented Shido's outfit, and said she'd love to have him serve her all the time in that outfit after she wins. The maidens around her started acting jealous, so she used her powers to command all of them to leave. After they left, Shido accused Miku of spying on him, but she said she was there because she wanted to ask him out on a date. Some minutes later, she bought them some snacks and cheerfully ate them while Kotori, who watched from a screen, told Kyuhei that her strange actions would actually work in their favor. She instructed Shido not to say he hates her this time, and when he tries the treat, he's impressed by how delicious it was. Miku grabs a bite of his snack as well and then feeds him a bit of hers. After getting motivated by Kotori, he reluctantly ate it, and Miku said they're just like a couple. Afterwards, Miku took Shido to a ring toss game, and she asked him what prize he wanted her to win for him. He chose a strange-looking doll, but she ended up failing all her tries at the ring game. Just when Shido was about to suggest leaving, Miku used her powers to command the shop owner to hand them the doll. After she hands Miku the doll, Shido chews her out, telling her she has to win the prizes herself instead of cheating. Miku argued that it wasn't cheating since the ladies were honored to hand her the dolls, and then she went further to say that humans were her little playthings. She then told Shido that he shouldn't concern himself with humans because he was above them. And aboard the Fraxinus ship, Kyuhei said they were poor things because they didn't realize that trash bags like him enjoyed being the plaything. Back at the festival, Shido said he was now certain he'd beat Miku and claimed that he'd make her speak to people eye to eye by showing her the power of humanity. He said some more bold words, and she replied that she'd give him a chance to prove his words before bidding him farewell. Some hours later, the MC announced that the Tenno Festival performances would soon begin, and she asked the performers to come backstage to prepare for it. Shido tried calling Origami, but she didn't answer, and the pesky trio, I, My, and Me, weren't around as well, so he wondered where they were. When the trio finally answered his call, he told them to come backstage, but they said they no longer wanted to perform because Miku told them not to. Shido realized that Miku used her powers on them and he started panicking because he knew performing with Toka alone was a recipe for disaster. Kotori then told him that he'd have to lip sync and informed him that she'd already sent some backup to help set things up. He asked if she was sure it would work, and she replied that she'd make it work no matter what. Some minutes later, Miku went on stage and she was about to pull off another Temu Ariana Grande performance when the stage lights suddenly went off. Kotori revealed to Shido that she had some people tweak the electronics backstage in order to ruin her performance. But just then, Miku transformed into her spirit form. Kotori couldn't believe that she summoned her astral dress in front of an entire crowd, and she then proceeded to sing her favorite Naruto opening, while the crowd danced with glowing sticks. After the performance, everyone was impressed, including Toka, and Shido realized that there was no way they could top that. However, Kaguya and Yuzuru showed up and told Shido not to give up so early. Meanwhile, the Fraxinus aircrew noticed that many wizards from DEM had arrived in the area, and Kotori wondered why they were attacking at that very moment. Just then, a blast from afar took out one of the robots, and Jessica was annoyed when she saw that the blast came from Origami, who was using a former DEM device called the White Licorice. She wondered how she was able to use such a powerful device, and then she ordered her comrades to attack her. They fired several missiles at Origami, but she blocked them off with a massive force field, and then extended that force field in a way that trapped many of the enemy soldiers in mini territory fields. She then fired some missiles which destroyed the gears of the enemy, and Jessica tried to call in for backup, but Kusakabe politely told her to back off. As Shido's group made their way to the stage, the Yamai sisters told Shido about how great they were at instruments. When they arrived on stage, Shido started feeling shy when he saw the crowd, but he realized that his dates were much more difficult to handle. The Yamai sisters and Toka started hitting the background music, but when it was time for Shido to lip-sync, he noticed that the song wasn't playing. When Kotori asked what was going on, Shizaki informed her that they couldn't use their vocal track because the fight at Tengu Square damaged the power grid. Kotori then ordered Shido to wing it, and he felt that there was no way he could do so. But just then, Toka started singing her favorite Barbie song. As the music went on, Origami went commando on all the enemy soldiers, and after the performance, the crowd cheered loudly. On the battlefield, Jessica fired some missiles which tore apart Origami's defenses, and she pointed out that Origami was cooked because she'd now reached the time limit of her special weapon. As the battle raged on, the MC proceeded to announce the results of the performances at the 25th Annual Tenno Festival, and in third place came a school named Senjo University High School. The position of second place was given to Shido and Raisin High, while the first place prize was given to Miko's school, the Rendoji Academy for Women. Hearing this, the crowd cheered loudly while Miku smiled mischievously. Miku walked over to Shido and told him he lost because he chose to use the power of friendship instead of dirty tricks, before reminding him that as of that day, he and his spirits now belonged to her. She told him not to be afraid because she took good care of her favorite toys, but they were interrupted when the MC announced that the overall winners for the first day of the festival was Raisin High School. Shido couldn't believe it, and the MC explained that Raisin High's Maid Cafe got an outstanding number of votes in the mock business competition, which bumped them past Rendoji into first place. The girls started celebrating with Shido while Miku started throwing a tantrum. Shido interrupted Miku's rant to tell her that he won because of the power of friendship and explained that despite the fact that she had the better performance, his classmates ended up covering for what they lacked. He then stated that no matter how weak she felt humans were, together they could best even a powerful spirit like her, and then he asked her to join them. However, she told him to shut up and claimed that his words had no power over her. She then summoned her angel, which was named Gabriel, and it manifested in the form of an enormous musical instrument with which she sent sound waves that hypnotized the entire crowd and knocked the other spirit girls out. Before Shido could do anything, Miku made a bunch of her maidens to hold him, and she told him to forget about their promise, because she now believed that there was nothing in the world that wouldn't bend to her will. As she spoke about how Shido and the girls would become her personal playthings, she started getting handsy with Shido, and when she went low, she was shocked when she felt some meat there. She poked it several more times to be sure, and then she backed away from him before telling her girls to do a thorough check on this so-called Shiori. The girls immediately rushed to pull down the trunks he was wearing underneath, and when Miku saw the tiny shrimp he was packing, she suddenly started to lose her mind, because she now realized that her beloved Shiori was actually a man. Out of anger, she played her instrument once again, sending out a massive sound wave which made the people in the crowd stand her personal zombies. Shido ran towards Miku, but he was stopped in his tracks by Yoshino, who had now been hypnotized by the crazy songstress, and things got even more wild when the Yamai sisters showed up to protect Miku as well. Miku started gloating over the fact that she turned all of his spirits into her slaves, and when Shido saw Toka behind him, he feared that she'd also become one of Miku's servants. Just then, Yoshino fired an ice blast at Shido, and the Yamai sisters fired a combo wind attack at him as well. Before their attacks could reach him, Toka lifted him to a higher spot in the arena where she asked him what was going on. Shido asked how wasn't affected by Mike's spell, and Toka revealed that it was because of some Temu iPods she wore during their music performance. Shido explained to her that Miku was controlling everyone, and he tried to get some help from Katori, but she replied that he'd be destroyed if he didn't listen to Miku, causing him to realize that his sister had been hypnotized by Miku as well. Just then, Yoshino and the Yamai sisters surrounded them, and on the Fraxanus airship, Shizaki told Reina that the rest of the crew started acting weird while she was checking the hall's sound system. Just then, the airship started prepping up a giant magic blast, which was targeting the Tengu Square central stage, and when Shiozaki asked Kotori what she was doing, she said she intended to barbecue all the idiots who disobeyed Meika. Shiozaki begged Kakyohei, who was acting as Kotori's chair, to do something, but he told her to back off because he was currently living in the utopia he dreamed of for so long. The other crew members on the ship held Shizaki and Rain down while Kotori moved to push the fire button, but before she could hit it, she was hit with a karate chop by a mysterious lady. At the same time, Jessica and her squad fired a barrage of attacks at Aratagami, which destroyed part of her gear, and it got to a point where Jessica decided to put an end to things. Just when Jessica was about to blow her brains out, Mana pulled off a flashy entrance by zooming into the area after destroying several of Jessica's comrades. Jessica called her by her old nickname as she asked why she was attacking them, and Mana replied that she's quitting DEM. Jessica pointed the gun at her while accusing her of betraying Isaac, and in response, Mana destroyed Jessica's gear with ease before launching her into her comrades' arms. She then told them to leave with her immediately, and they obeyed her command. Back at the theater, Taka deflected some wind attacks by the Yamai sisters, and when she tried to take out Miku with a slash, Yoshino blocked using an ice wall. The Yamai sisters then fired a wind blast that sent Toka flying through the wall, but before they could attack Shido, Toka came right back inside and charged at Miku. The crazy songstress managed to dodge her attack, and she pushed her into the wall using a scream attack. Just then, Ellen showed up in her full battle gear, and she told her superiors that she'd capture Toka and Shido immediately. Hearing this, Toka threw Shido outside the building, and Ellen complimented her for using her brain for once. Toka tried to attack her, but she easily countered with her sword while claiming that Toka's attacks were much weaker than before. Ellen then said she'd finish her off in an instant before charging in to face her again. On the outside, Shido watched helplessly as Ellen carried Toka's unconscious body away, and he eventually ran after them. Sometime later, it was reported on the news that tens of thousands of rioters were swarming the city, and Shido started panicking as he wondered how he'd save his pea-brained damsel in distress. Just then, Kurumi walked into the room and told Shido he was out of options, since Miku now had Yoshino and the Yamai sisters under her control. When Shido asked if she was under Miku's control, Kurumi replied that there was no way she'd be moved by such trashy sounds. Shido then begged her to save Toka, and Kurumi laughed at how surprisingly straightforward he was being. Meanwhile, Toka woke up in a restrainment chamber where Ellen told her they'd soon capture Shido as well before torturing her using a territory field. At the same time, Kurumi took Shido to Miku's house where she teased him using Miku's milk containers, before falling on top of him in a sus way. She licked an injury he had on his cheek, and he noticed some pictures on the ground. Kurumi then used her gun to fire a bullet through the picture and into her skull. She explained that the bullet gave her the memories held by anything it pierces, and because of that, she found out Miku's secret. A while later, the pesky trio reported to Miku that Shido was at the front gate of her base, so she officially welcomed him back. Miku's slaves tried attacking Shido, but Kurumi stopped them by creating a force field which knocked all of them out. Miku, who watched the events unfold through her screen, wondered what kind of Harry Potter-level witchcraft she just pulled off, and she realized that Kurumi was a spirit. She wondered why Kurumi wasn't affected by her music, and when she remembered Shido asking her to let him seal her powers, she swore that she wouldn't let him and then announced to the spirit she had under her control that it was time to resume her concert. When Shido and Kurumi arrived at the concert hall, Miku called him all sorts of names including a talking trash can and a wannabe superhero, but Shido still asked her to hear him out. He told her he needed to go save Toka, but she interrupted his speech by telling him to shut up, and then used her angel to wake up all of her zombies. Kurumi was surprised because humans caught in her shadows would normally not be able to move, and Miku explained that her angel Gabriel did more than mesmerize people. She then commanded her zombies to destroy Shido, but Kurumi told her not to celebrate such a minute triumph because she didn't stand a chance against her. Kurumi then summoned a bunch of arms from her shadow which held all the zombies in place, and she told Shido not to fear because she had no intention of taking their life. Just then, the Yamai sisters activated their angels and used them to fire a wind blast which pushed Shido away, and Kurumi caught him before he could make impact with the wall. Shido thanked Kurumi for saving him, and the Yamai sisters started threatening to unalive him if he tried to attack Miku. Kurumi summoned some clones in the area, but Yoshino put them down using ice attacks before claiming that she wouldn't let them lay a finger on Miku. A whole group of Kurumi's clones started blasting bullets at the spirit twins, but they blocked with a wave of wind, and eventually Kurumi summoned her actual angel before telling Shido that she'd give him a chance to have his personal time with Miku. Using a special ability of hers, Kurumi zoomed past all the opposition while holding on to Shido, and they arrived at the spot where Miku was standing. Kurumi then pulled Miku and Shido underground using her clones, and as Shido was getting pulled down, Kurumi said it was up to him to bring Miku to her senses. Shido and Miku arrived at a dark dimension, where Miku started ranting about the fact that she couldn't use her abilities, and also the fact that she was alone with the smelliest virgin on planet Earth. Shido apologized for deceiving her, and he tried to beg her to undo her hypnosis on the others, but she told him to shut up. Shido then told her that he needed to save Toka, because a wizard from DEM had captured her, and he claimed that he couldn't do it without her help. He went further to say that he wasn't sure he could do it with only Kurumi's help, but he was confident that they could pull it off if she helped as well. Miku immediately refused and asked him to shut up before claiming that he was a human who was too selfish for his own good. Shido asked her why she hated humanity so much, but then they were interrupted by Kurumi, who informed Shido that their time was up. They were transported back to the surface world where the spirit girls had already impaled all of Kurumi's clones. As Yoshino and the sisters checked on Miku, Kurumi told Shido that they needed to retreat. Yoshino then fired an ice attack which barely missed Shido and said she would unalive anyone who opposes Miku. However, Kurumi used a special bullet of hers which teleported herself and Shido out of the area. When they got outside, Shido thanked Kurumi for her help, and she asked him to pat her head as a reward. As he patted her head, Kurumi said their efforts were worth it because it proved to Miku that she's a threat to her. Kurumi then started pulling off some forbidden moves on Shido, while bringing up the fact that he tried to recruit Miku for his rescue mission when he already had her. She teased him a bit more before revealing that she found out where Toka was. When Shido asked where she was, Kurumi revealed that she was at the first office building of the Duke Ex Machina Industries in Japan. Meanwhile, Isaac introduced himself to Toka, and when he asked Ellen why Toka didn't like him, Ellen said the methods they used in capturing her weren't particularly pleasant. When Toka asked what he was after, Isaac revealed that he wanted her spirit powers so he could change the very machinations of the world. He then asked her what would make her feel despair, and he started listing different painful things he could do to her. When he mentioned unaliving someone she loves in front of her, Toka remembered when Shido was gunned down in front of her, and Ellen revealed to Isaac that Shido was the one closest to her. She also told him that when she questioned Toka, she saw her most emotional responses when she mentioned Shido's name, and Isaac decided that they'd continue her interrogation when Shido arrived. Toka tried to ask what they intended to do with Shido, but Ellen shut her up using a territory field. Meanwhile, Kurumi and Shido arrived at a spot nearby, and she told him that the first office building was the tall tower in the middle of all the buildings in the area. She, however, stated that she didn't know where in the building Toka was being held, and then asked to go over the plan with Shido. Kurumi said that once they arrive at the tower, she'd summon many copies of herself to raid all the buildings throughout the complex, and that would force their security forces to spread out, leaving the route to Toka lightly guarded. Just then, the spacequake alarm started buzzing, and Shido presumed that there was a spirit in the area, but Kurumi said it was the Deus Ex Machina group that triggered the alarm themselves. She then saved Shido from some energy blasts which were fired at them, and explained that the enemies didn't want people to see the carnage that was coming. Shido noticed that a large group of Bandersnatches were above them, and when the Bandersnatches started blasting at them, Kurumi's clones started ripping them apart. Kurumi decided to switch plans, and following her new plan, she used a special ability of hers to lead them through the commotion and into the first office building. Mana made a surprise appearance by slashing Kurumi and then hugging Shido, but Kurumi revived herself and started rage-baiting her by bringing up their previous encounter until Shido told them to cut it out. Kurumi said she'd leave Shido in the hands of Mana, since she had her own business with Deus Ex Machina to handle, and she assured Shido that her clones would still keep the bots occupied before vanishing into a portal. After she left, Mana handed Shido a comm device which Kotori used in apologizing for the things she said while she was under Miku's influence. Meanwhile, Miku was having dinner and she asked the girls if Shido really cared for Toka. The pesky trio gave some blunt responses, but Miku angrily told them to be truthful, so they confessed that Shido cared for Toka very much. Miku then asked what Shido would do if he had to put his life on the line to save Toka, and Yoshino replied that he wouldn't hesitate for a single second. Kaguya said she was certain that the lunatic would happily sprint headfirst into that fires of hell to save someone just like he did for them, and Yuzuru added that Shido would absolutely do anything for Toka. Back at the Deus Ex Machina building, Shido rushed forward while Kotori tried to talk him out of it. Shido refused to back down, so Kotori offered to help him from the ship. Meanwhile, Origami tried to leave the hospital room in order to help Shido, but her friend held her back and reminded her that she wasn't permitted to use battle gear. However, Origami said she'd use standard equipment, and her friend tried to argue against it, but Origami said she had to save Shido by any means necessary. Her friend then offered her a special piece of gear which she said would help her situation. At the same time, Shido was informed by the Fraxinus crew that Toka was being held in a quarantine room in the upper floor of the building, and as they moved forward, they were ambushed by Jessica, who was wearing a special gear called Scarlet Licorice. Mana faced off against Jessica, and Shido ran forward to a spot where some guards started chasing him. They eventually pinned him to the wall using a territory field, and he broke free by summoning Sandalphon. With a single swing, Shido destroyed the hallway, and when a guard stabbed him with a dagger, he knocked the guard out with the handle of his sword. Shido held his injured torso as he moved through the halls searching desperately for Toka. Outside the building, Kurumi and the robots continued to have an intense face-off while the agents who were in the area struggled to comprehend the madness they were witnessing. On the inside, Shido took down another guard as he stumbled through the hallway, and he eventually arrived at a staircase, where he was pinned to the wall again using a territory field. Some minutes later, the guards surrounded him and pinned him to the ground using a force field. Just then, Miku made a dramatic entrance by using her angel weapon to release a sound wave that incapacitated the enemy soldiers. When Shido called Miku's name, she started hurling insults at him again, and then the other spirit girls came by to ask if they could assist as well. Miku told them that their angels were too big to fight indoors with, and then she asked them to make sure the wizards outside didn't make it into the building. After they left, Shido asked Miku if she was there to honor their promise, but the bootleg Katy Perry said the only reason she was there was because she wanted Toka in her collection. As she moved ahead, Shido thanked her and said he owed her very much. Outside the building, Jessica was going wild with her blasts, and Mana tried to inform her that she was taking out her own allies as well, but Jessica couldn't care less, because she fired an even bigger wave of blasts in that area. After evading her attack, Mana realized that Jessica had lost all rationality because she processed too much magic at once, and then Kotori told her that she'd give her supporting fire. Just then, some territory fields appeared in the area which exploded when Jessica came close to them. And just when Mana started to feel safe, Ellen appeared in full battle gear and challenged her to a fight. Jessica then respawned and fired a massive blast which Mana barely managed to block off, and Ellen said she had to follow her boss's orders despite not being a fan of unfair fights. Ellen then charged at Mana again, and Jessica sent a barrage of missiles which exploded on her back. Ellen was about to land the final blow, but her sword got deflected by a laser blast which was sent by a newly arriving Origami. Mana told Origami that Shido was still alive and that he was at the first office building, so she started making her way there. However, Ellen blocked her path and said she wouldn't let her go. Inside the building, Miku interrogated a female enemy guard using her sus techniques, and the guard revealed that Toka was being held in a quarantine room on the 18th floor of the building. She also gave Miku a keycard which she could use to get into the room, and Miku rewarded her with some compliments. Shido and Miku then moved to an upper floor, where some guards immediately started raining bullets on them. They hid in the corner to avoid the blast, and Miku yeeted the shooters away using a sound wave. When some other gunmen appeared, Shido fired a slash at them using Sandalphon, and they tried to block using their force field, but the blast still knocked them out. Shido fell to his knees out of exhaustion, causing Miku to be concerned, but then he got back up, and Miku asked why he was so strongly driven. Shido said it was because he wanted to save Toka no matter what, and Miku claimed he was just putting on a fairy tale hero act. She continued mocking him, but he refused to reply to her, so she went even lower by telling him to give up on Toka in exchange for all the baddies he wanted. However, Shido told her to screw herself before claiming that no one could ever replace Toka. He then tried to explain that not every human was the scum she was pointing them out to be, but she told him to shut up and claimed that all humans were her playthings. Shido then asked why she hated men so much and objectified girls. Before she could repeat her trashy catchphrase about humans, Shido told her she was a human who was given her spirit powers by a phantom. Miku asked how he figured it out, and he said he had a friend who was really good at research, even though he was simply referring to Kurumi. He tried to lecture her some more, but she told him to stop because he didn't know anything about her. When he asked her why she became that way, she narrated how she used to be an average human idol named Tsukino. Back then, people loved her voice, but then her manager offered her a chance to be on the big screen in exchange for some private dances with him. After she refused, they made up a horrid gossip story about her, which ruined her career. She tried to regain the love of her fans by singing, but she realized that she'd lost her voice. However, Shido said it wasn't a reason to hate humanity, and then he used some more talk no jutsu on her until some guards came and she took them out using a sound wave. They argued as they went up the stairs, and after Shido took out some more guards, he told her that he wanted to hear her sing with her real voice that didn't have hypnotizing tricks. He brought up an original song of hers he heard and said he loved it because he could feel the overwhelming effort she put into it. Miku argued that he was saying the same thing as the fans who gave up on her, but Shido then said he was going to be the one to save her. Outside the building, Origami started firing blasts at Ellen, but Ellen evaded her many tricky moves before grabbing her neck. As Ellen choked her out, she complimented her for being creative with her offense, but reminded her that she's the greatest wizard in history. She then claimed that Arata was too smart for her own good, which made her a threat rather than an asset to Deus Ex Machina, and they were interrupted by a massive blast which came from the Fraxinus ship above. Ellen blocked the attack using her field, but it allowed Origami to free herself from Ellen's hold, and she was about to capitalize before Ellen launched her into a nearby building. Ellen was about to finish her off, but then she got summoned by her boss and ran away immediately. When Shido arrived at the quarantine room, he told Isaac to release Toka, but instead Isaac created a barrier between them. Just then, Ellen appeared and brutally stabbed Shido right in front of Toka. Isaac then told Tuka to unleash her powers so she could stop Ellen from unaliving her man. Tuka summoned Sandalphon and she desperately tried to cut through the barrier, but it didn't work. And just when Ellen was about to land the finishing blow on Shido, Tuka lost control and transformed into an overpowered Dark Lord. Shido woke up confused, and then he saw Toka looking colder than every villain on Bleach while holding a darker version of Sandalphon. Dark Toka then asked Miku to tell her where she was, and when Miku replied that it was one of Deus Ex Machina facility buildings, she said she'd never heard of such a place before. Dark Toka then asked her why she was in that place, and Miku replied that it was because Ellen brought her there. Isaac then started bragging about how Dark Toka was a perfect inversion, and he told Ellen that as the greatest wizard of all humanity, she was destined to claim the head of Dark Toka, who he referred to as the evil Dark Lord. Ellen said she knew and then charged at Dark Toka. Outside the building, Jessica practically became a rabid dog as she started blasting Mana relentlessly, and Mana evaded her attacks before charging at her. Jessica blocked Mana's strike using a force field, but suddenly she started coughing up some blood, and her field shattered some of her gear as it reduced, causing Mana to realize that Jessica had reached her limit. Mana told Jessica to give up, but Jessica once again started blasting relentlessly like a frustrated Call of Duty player, and Mana knew that if she made any wrong move during their fight, she'd end up unaliving her. Jessica then started ranting about how Isaac and Chief Mathers chose Mana over her, and in response, Mana said Jessica had always been this jealous, whiny crybaby. Mana covered herself in a force field as she charged at Jessica, and in her mind she knew that Jessica did nothing to deserve what was coming to her, even though she hated her. She then stabbed Jessica brutally in the gut, and as Jessica's lights faded, she asked Mana if Isaac would approve of her. Mana replied that he would, and Jessica smiled with tears in her eyes as she finally passed on. Inside the facility, Dark Toka and Ellen were having a Goku vs Vegeta level showdown, and when Dark Toka dodged a flurry of Ellen's sword strikes, Ellen switched to an even larger energy blade, which she swung in the direction of Dark Toka. The blast ended up destroying the roof of the facility, but Dark Toka was completely unharmed, and she complimented Ellen's power level before raising her hand to launch an attack of her own. However, Ellen charged at her before she could launch her attack, and Dark Toka stopped Ellen's sword with her bare hand before firing a massive dark blast at her. Miku protected Shido from the blast using a sound wave, and Shido wondered if this overpowered being he was looking at was really Toka. Isaac thanked Ellen for saving him, and she told him that Toka was now a top-level threat. When he asked if she could unalive her, Ellen said that she could, and then boldly stated that no entity in the entire universe could defeat her when she's in top condition. She then pointed out that the wound she sustained during her fight with Origami had reopened during the blast, and she claimed that it would be risky to fight Dark Toka at that moment, causing Isaac to suggest a strategic retreat. On his way out, he called Shido to Kamiya, and Shido asked him what he knew about him. Isaac dodged that question as he vanished with Ellen. After they left, Dark Toka fired a dark blast directly at Shido, but Sandalphon blocked the attack. She asked how he was able to wield Sandalphon, and Shido started calling Toka's name in an attempt to snap her back to her senses. However, Dark Toka wasn't familiar with the name Toka, and just then Kotori called in to ask Shido what was going on. Shido asked if he could get Toka back by sealing her powers again, but Ryan said it wasn't Toka's power, and Kotori added that her affection levels were far from adequate. Shido then asked what he needed to do, and Kotori said her numbers would return to normal once he drew out the real Toka. Hearing this, Shido tried to invite Dark Toka to follow him for dinner, but she sent him flying with a dark blast. Miku then surrounded Dark Toka with her sound equipment and blasted sound waves at her from all directions until Dark Toka destroyed her weapon. Dark Toka then attempted to destroy her with a dark blast, and Miku started thinking about her past as Shido rushed desperately to save her. Meanwhile, Yoshino and the Yamai sisters regained consciousness, and they started to wonder what they were doing at the facility before Origami came flying towards them. Back inside the building, Shido managed to save Miku in time, and she was surprised by the fact that he kept his promise to her. They noticed that Dark Toka's brain was starting to tweak, but then Dark Toka transformed her weapon into its ultimate form and started gathering up dark energy. Seeing this, Miku shielded Shido, but before Dark Toka could launch the attack, a wind attack from Yoshino came flying towards her. She blocked the attack, and Shido assured Miku that he'd save Toka as he moved ahead. Dark Toka fired a massive dark blast at Shido that split the entire town into two, but just when she started celebrating, the Yamai sisters revealed that they saved Shido before the dark blast could hit him. Shido then flew towards Dark Toka and threw the sword away before kissing her. As he kissed her, memories of the time they spent together began swarming into her mind, and she transformed into the original Toka as they landed on the ground. Some hours later, Kurumi sent all her clones back into her shadow as she continued to search for a certain spirit. The next day, Miku met up with Shido and called him darling. He brought up a letter she sent him where she asked to talk privately, and she responded by kissing him, causing her spirit dress to vanish. She hugged Shido while telling him that she'd sing for him even if the world didn't want to hear her sing anymore. Just then, Toka walked in and saw them in that So's position. Some hours later, Miku sang an original song for a crowd, while Shido watched from the stands. After the performance, she got a standing ovation that made her cry. Now he's a question for you. Would you rather go hardcore with Dark Toka, or get some throat action from Miku? Let us know in the comments. That's all for today's video. If you like anime recaps like this, check out this video here.